Okay, so I guess I should just start. Oh,
Hold
yeah,
on.
my name is. Oh, all right.
Give me 1 second. All right. Hello, this is Ace Philosophy. Welcome to the Ace Philosophy YouTube channel. We are having a conversation about evolution with several esteemed guests. We have Objective Ethics, Yenek, Jonny, and we're going to get right into it. We're going to have some introductory statements. We're going to start with Objective, and then Yenek, and then Jonny, just a minute or two, and lay out some ground rules, and then we'll get right into the conversation. All right, Objective, what do you got?
Yeah, I just want to, as some of your audience members might be familiar with me, we've had the pleasure of talking in the past. And just for people who don't know, my expertise is actually in manufacturing and boat building specifically. I've got 2 patents for my innovative hull design. I'm licensed by the U.S. Coast Guard to build boats. So when it comes to things like talking about Noah's flood and stuff like that, I attack that from the aspect of knowing for a fact that Noah's Ark was not a seaworthy vessel. But I'm not a geologist. I'm not a biologist. And so these kind of questions that always often come up are outside of my purview. And so I always defer to the experts and to scientific consensus. So I've invited Yenek and Jonny to talk about evolution as it ties into that kind of flood thing that we were talking about, and so many conversations when it comes to creationism. I'm very grateful for them taking the time to do this. One thing I just want to address really quickly, because I know this comes up a lot, and I just want to get ahead of it. I've heard so much talk about a conspiracy theory, that there's some kind of conspiracy theory with science against God, basically, and against religion. And I just want to throw some data points out there for the audience and for everybody else, just to kind of consider that, how that really falls apart when you actually break down the numbers. Is what you're essentially saying is 2 things. One is that a field of science can possibly be isolated from any other field, and that's just not the case. Science is an interconnected discipline. So it'd be like saying the nervous system could be disconnected from the skeletal system. It's just not possible. Every field of science essentially directly or indirectly works with every other field of science. So the devil or atheists could not take over biology and get away with it. They could not take over geology and get away with it. It just doesn't work like that because of the interconnectedness of these disciplines. The other thing I will say is that essentially the implication would be that less than 2% of the world's global population has successfully managed a massive coup against everybody else, of all the other 8 billion people in the world, by taking over science. And that just is impractical. It just doesn't make any sense. The Abrahamic faiths alone account for half of the global population. That's the Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. You got 4 billion people there just in those 3 religions. Only 7% of the global population identifies as atheist, and they're not all scientists. When you actually look at the fields of science, and I've looked into these studies before this conversation to see how this works out, and it turns out that more people are actually religious than atheists, who are actually the scientists. They identify as religious. So by the numbers, this conspiracy theory, why hasn't any government actually alerted any of its people that, hey, look out, be on the lookout, because evolutionists or biologists are trying to promote this pseudoscience, essentially is what you're calling it at this point. And the numbers just don't lay out. So I just want to put that out there. And I know this isn't a conversation about conspiracy theories, but I know that's something that people fall back on a lot. And I just don't think the numbers, when you look at the numbers, that just doesn't make sense. So that's kind of my 2 cents of it. I'm going to sit back and let you guys do your thing.
Thank you, Objective. Yenek, go ahead.
Here, I guess I'm going to go by Yenek, as that is easier than using my real name out on the internet. My background, as I mentioned before the stream started, is in education. I have taught at the high school level. I've taught at the early university level, so the undergraduate level. And I don't hold any degrees in biology. I have taken the time to study these things to help the general population of students get through their base biology classes, their base chemistry classes, and all that fun stuff. And I've also just spent a lot of time in these circles dealing with the apologetics of creationism trying to sneak its way into schools and making sure that people understand the scientific consensus, what the base is of our understanding of methodological naturalism, and why it is the best way to understand the world around us that gives consistent, predictable, and demonstrable results.
All right, thank you, Yenek. And Jonny, if you want to give an introduction.
Hi, I'm Jonny. So I don't have any background in education, or I don't have any college degrees, at least not in that field. But actually, I don't have any at all. But I have examined the theory of evolution, and I believe that it is the best explanation for the diversity of life. I do not think that any religions have a good explanation for the world around us, and I think that evolution is the best explanation. It's just my opinion.
All right. Well, that's thank you all for the introductions. Let's do it this way. Yenek, you sound like you have the strongest background in these discussions.
Yes, of the three of us.
Yeah, probably including me as well. You probably just know more base data than I do. How about you go about defining what exactly we're discussing? Like when we talk about evolution, what is it you have in mind that you want to prove is what we should believe?
All right, that's actually the perfect starting point because I was planning on starting by asking you to define evolution, but this will just save time. So, evolution in the field of biology is defined as any change in the heritable characteristics of a population over successive generations. And what's important to note in that definition is that it means that individuals do not evolve. Individuals evolving is Pokemon, populations evolving is science.
So, for evolution to occur, there must be multiple individuals in successive generations.
Correct. There is the easiest example is Darwin's first example of the finches. There was a population of finches that flew from the mainland of South America to the Galapagos Islands. That population split into several smaller populations, each with different niches for finding food, and they changed over the course of generations to fit into those niches in size, in beak shape, in beak serratedness, and they changed over such a long period of time that eventually it became impossible for them to breed with each other, and that's the idea of speciation.
Yeah. So basically, Yenek, you defined evolution as a change in allele frequencies over time. I don't think you used the word allele, but I think, okay, but basically, heritable characteristics is the term you used.
Correct.
To be quite honest, I don't think that even the most staunch young Earth creationist denies that definition of evolution. When I talk about what I want to discuss isn't a change in heritable characteristics because that's obvious and something that has been observed many times in history.
You'd be surprised.
Well, okay, maybe there are some out there. Some
there's Kent Hovind, there's Ken Ham who built a giant museum saying it's not a real thing.
Right. Well, go ahead, Johnny.
Are you more interested in human evolution? Is that what you want to talk about?
What I'm actually going for is the idea of universal common descent from a common ancestor. So
yeah.
The grander claims of evolution. I know that sometimes the language is basic, is creationist jargon. I'm looking at more macroevolutionary claims. Okay, the idea that all life started out as essentially some primordial amoeba type creature and then gradually diversify from there to everything that we see today. So that is something that evolution claims, right? Or evolutionary theory.
That is the logical conclusion of the process of evolution because we haven't found a way to separate out any individual clade. When you talk about the universal common ancestor, it's just working backwards. So we know if you start at humans, if you wanted to go humans all the way back to the universal common ancestor, we know that humans are a subset of hominins. That is humans, Australopiths, Ardipithecus. There's a bunch of them, but what creationists would call ape men, but are really just men. They are a subset of hominins. Hominins are a subset of great apes. Great apes are a subset of old world monkeys. Old world monkeys are a subset of primates. Primates are a subset of mammals. Mammals are a subset of chordates. Chordates are a subset of eukaryotes. Eukaryotes are a subset of things that are alive.
Mm-hmm.
So there isn't a stopping point where we can definitively say that there's a separation. We know things are related because we can see that in genetic tests, and they're related in such a way that it creates those nested hierarchies of cladistics. The problem is there's no cutoff point. There's nowhere you could say, okay, a human is in no way related to a mouse, even though they're both mammals. A human is in no way related to a crocodile, even though they're both tetrapods. You could pick any animal on Earth, and humans are at least a little related to them.
Yeah.
Right. So like humans are theoretically even related to like sponges and sea,
Yep.
and our sea urchins and things like that.
Everything that's alive.
Okay.
Basically,
So
everything that's alive is related to one another, at least to at some extent. I feel like, but like we know for like certain that we are related to chimpanzees and other modern apes because we share. Well, there's varying numbers, but if you want to go with the lowest number, we share about 87% DNA with them.
87. So okay, I'm surprised you said that because a 13% genetic difference is actually quite massive when you look at the
No, it
number of
is,
base.
yes, but it
Uh,
demonstrates that we are related, though.
So I have a really this is for me is a really big philosophical problem. Let's start with this point. Let's debate this point because
Okay.
first of all up until a few years ago, the scientific community was telling us that we were more than 96% similar to other
They're
great apes.
still right. Johnny is being charitable and using the highest of Jeffrey Tompkins numbers, which are provably demonstrably wrong.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
being generous by using like even the lowest number.
Well,
Still
that's not his lowest
demonstrates-
number. His lowest number was 70, which was even
Oh.
more ridiculous because in
Yeah, I
the
didn't even
same
know that part.
methodology that got the 70 number, a human genome was not 100% identical to itself.
Oh, that's not good.
Well, just okay. So this is an interesting data point. I actually have a video on my channel from about a month ago.
Mhm.
It's here, let me pull it up real fast. We can take our time. We're not in a super big hurry. All right. Since
Can I
since
ask,
yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. So you're asking us for you're asking us for evidence of this, right? Well, see, I like to ask people this question because I feel like it's a good starting point. If everything in the world current like if all life originated from like amoeba-like creatures, like you said, what would the evidence of that be?
Hold on one second. I'm multitasking here. I want to entertain your question,
Take your time. It's
but
fine. Oh,
well,
you
all right.
can pull the video from the thing.
What was your question? Sorry, I was pulling that up, so I was involved in that technical thing, and then you asked your
That's
question. I literally did not hear what you said, so please
I
ask it
should have.
again.
That's my bad. I should have waited till you weren't busy. My question was, I like to ask people this question because I feel like it's a good starting point for a topic. If like you say, all life originated from a single amoeba-like organism, what would the evidence of that look like?
Are you asking me or are you asking Yenek?
I'm asking you, like, what do you think the evidence would look like, just based on the knowledge?
Uh,
I mean, I can answer that question too if you'd like, but I'll let you go first.
I think Darwin in one of his books, it might have been The Origin of Species, said that there should be innumerable transitional forms in the fossil record,
Yeah.
and I think that it would be. I think that would probably be the best evidence. I don't think you could.
Well, we've got that.
Well, we actually kind of there's disputes about how well the fossil record demonstrates evolution. In my opinion,
Very well.
there are a lot of gaps
Oh,
that
yeah.
exist, and it's not so you
In
can't
what way?
like you can't when you look at the various creatures that we find as fossils, they all obviously have similarities to one another, and they also all have differences. I don't think it's possible to like definitively say this creature descended from this creature, and like you see the lines in the charts that they draw. To me, a lot of that's based on morphology, and with the rise of genetic sequencing, we've learned that the morphological trees were basically destroyed by that. So and there's also other reasons to think that the trees that they construct are basically just speculation as opposed to objective. So to me, I'm not sure if we could get to what proof, but if there was a stronger fossil record, that would probably be the best evidence, I would
Alrighty.
say.
Well, I have two things with that. Were you done? I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
What do you think
So
the evidence would
the
be?
first thing is in science, we never accept a hypothesis. Nothing is ever proven. We only fail to reject hypotheses. So, we don't deal with proofs. Proofs are for math. But on the fossil side of things, we don't need to demonstrate that one thing evolved into another. We don't have to have the actual chain. all we need to show is that populations evolved the suite of characteristics that we have over geologic time. And we see that from Ardipithecus ramidus to Australopithecus africanus, Australopithecus afarensis, into Homo erectus, into Homo habilis, into Homo neanderthalensis. I'm ruining the Latin here, all the way into Homo sapien. And we
also
see
see-
every characteristic from basal ape to modern human arise slowly through geologic time within that subset of species. So we watch them go from arboreal to bipedal and on the ground. We watch them go from tiny brain cases for their, well, not for their comparatively tiny brain cases to humans, to steadily larger and larger. And not only do we see this steady increase, but those increases overlap. So we know that at least some of the time they both existed at the same time. And there are even some versions of Homo that have bigger brain cases than we do, but they had other issues that obviously they died out. So we know that the fossil record shows every trait you could think of that makes Homo sapiens emerges through this line.
Can I just chime in one thing really quick here on top of that?
Sure, objective.
So I just recently watched a debate that Gutsick Gibbon was having with another a biologist who's got his doctorate, and he's a young Earth creationist. And essentially, to just put this in really, really simple terms for the people like myself, the young Earth creationist, he was basically saying that he would need to seed a fossil that was more ape-like than human-like, but wasn't an ape. And then the response was, well, we have that. So what I think what the brother is touching on here is we have these transitions. We see these species, these transitional species with certain that share certain traits, and yet are completely an individual thing themselves. So, and we see this transition over time. Am I getting that right?
Yes.
And we see a similar thing in cetaceans. You go from
Yeah, but let's just stick to the human ape for now.
okay.
All right, I'm looking. Okay, so well, first of all, right, we talked about we're talking about human evolution now and our relationship to apes. So there's 3 points that I want to have on the table. First of all, we were talking about how actually genetically related are we to the closest ancestor would be chimpanzees, supposedly.
Yep.
The other one is the idea of the fossil record demonstrating this slow evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And the third kind of greater principle is that evolutionary relatedness can be seen through genetic similarities.
Mm-hmm.
So those are kind of 3 topics. All right, so what was it? Ape, human, chimp, genetics, percentage. So I just want to keep a note of all the things we're discussing.
The conventional science right now is 99.6 on coding DNA, and I think just shy of 96 across the entire genome. They just recently did a study on the whole genomes because we finally had a telomere to telomere chimp and telomere to telomere human.
That's pretty cool.
Genetic similarities show evolutionary. All right, I think so. Okay, I did this. Let me just kind of make some points here, and we can go back and forth on that. I don't want to just hog all the airtime, obviously.
Yeah.
But I have a series going on my channel called ID Update, and the most recent one, which I did on June 24th, is ID Update number 4: Human and Chimp Similarity Myth Destroyed by New Study. The topic is Human-Chimp Similarity Destroyed by Science Itself. So I goes into a paper from Nature right here. Where again, these are not creationists. Actually, from this year, it's from April 9th, 2025. Complete sequencing of 8 genomes. So this is April of this year is the most complete sequencing of 8 genomes that has ever occurred. And what they discovered is that all of the 8 various apes are not as all close genetically related as they thought they were before this. So they did confirm that humans and chimps are about 85% similar. So the 96% myth has been officially debunked by, evolutionary scientists themselves. So And I guess I have also. So yeah, that there is no longer
Well,
scientists.
you only showed me the.
Yeah, it's just the abstract, but
Yeah, I would need to actually see the data that shows that.
Right. So if okay. So let's take the time. It's been a while since I looked at this, but again, let me try to scroll down here and see if I can. Okay, this is kind of. Let's take a look at this. We're gonna take this. Going to take a little bit. Let me.
Yeah, that's fine. Take your time. Just keep scrolling through. I want to see the actual data.
Right.
Because just the problem. Fun thing about teaching college students, the problem with just reading the abstract of the paper is you're going to miss out on any actual data that helps you prove your point.
Right. Let's see if we can
it's
find.
It's also the main problem with using ChatGPT as research material.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it pulls from like 1,000 different sources, and then it gives you like an answer that's not even right.
Let's see if we can find it real fast.
Gene annotation, like this is all the actual.
Yeah, let's. I'm trying to find. I'm trying to find the punchline where it talks about the genetic differences. I think it was a little farther down. They kind of buried the lead. I think it was because it was kind of bad for evolution that all these massive differences were found in these things that they. So here we see regions of rapid divergence. This is a term that they used to just say that things were a lot more different than they thought they were. They don't know.
Individual regions.
Right. They don't know as rapid diversification. That's what they call it because it would be consistent with their presuppositions.
Well, it would be in line with all previously available data.
Well, what happens is what they presuppose. Here's what I'm thinking they're doing. They presuppose evolution is true. So any massive differences they weren't expecting must have been due to rapid divergence, which they didn't observe that obviously. So that's not a scientific claim. It's a basically almost a religious claim at some point when
it's not because it's based on data.
Well, well, there's an observation. The only observation is that there's more differences than they thought. The idea that it was caused by some sort of rapid divergence is not something that they observed. Otherwise, they would have known it beforehand because they would have observed it, but they didn't observe it. So, all right, I don't want to spend half an hour looking for exactly. I thought it was. Maybe I'll find it later. I can do another stream where I can kind of zoom in. Basically, what happened was, and this is a write-up on a website that you all probably wouldn't agree with, but basically, this is a write-up of analysis of that of study from evolutionnews.org, which is Discovery Institute.
Yeah.
And it says, new research overturns claim that human chimps differ by only 1%. Again, it references the Nature paper by you, and it they go through... basically, humans and chimps are about 13% difference. Also, all of the other apes demonstrate similar levels of genetic difference from one another. So the great apes are actually not very closely genetically related to each other, which is pretty devastating for evolutionary theory. And because remember, your claim was that the reason we're similar or should be seen is because of the genetic similarities. But we now know, based on this most recent analysis in April of this year, that the great apes are not very genetically related to one another, which is a huge problem for evolution. So you can speak to that if you want. Again, the paper, I have it linked in my June 24th. It's nature.com. The main publisher is a person by the name of you. I really wish
if you could send me the link to the actual paper in the StreamYard.
Yeah, let me post it. Let me post it in the private chat.
I'm gonna be that guy for a second. I'm just gonna drop a YouTube.
No, yeah. Let's take our time. Let's take our time. I don't want this to be a hit and run kind of thing. I want us to really.
I mean, no, I'm just like I have had these discussions with creationists before, and I do my best to avoid YouTube videos and prefer peer-reviewed papers where I can get them. But rather than searching, I'm just going to grab Erica Gutzit-Gibbon, who is a great resource for this sort of thing because she's much better educated in this than I am. Her actual I ran the blast data video right there in the chat for you.
Let me see, because I know at some point in here, it actually does give the.
Yeah, I remember just from referencing the Guts That Give It video, she had a chart of this is the differences between the genomes. So I know that the data exists, but it's not outside of the realms of what was expected in the scientific consensus.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find. Where it gave those, because I know it's in here somewhere, but this.
Yeah,
I'm scrolling down.
Just from memory, the big overturning we had was it was originally assumed that well, not assumed, but thought that chimps and humans were closest to each other both ways. So that chimps and humans were each other's closest relatives, and then the other way around, that chimps and bonobos were more distant from each other than chimps were to humans. But that's not true. Chimps and bonobos belong in their own clade. They're both genus Pan.
Mm-hmm.
I also wouldn't say they. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I also wouldn't say they presuppose that evolution is true because they already have evidence for it. So since they already have evidence for evolution in and of itself, they can make the logical conclusion that these differences were expected because of that. When they found these differences, it makes sense because of what they already know.
That could be the case, but here's the problem I have with that is, see, the whole argument is that these creatures are genetically we can prove that they're related to one another evolutionarily because they have genetic similarities. But then when there are areas that diverge greater than is expected, well, then they just throw out this term called rapid divergence to cover up the fact that something is there that wasn't expected. So it creates a post hoc explanation and an unfalsifiable because they didn't observe that rapid divergence. They just see that there's a big difference in these sections of genomes, and they use words to basically state that, oh, something happened. Well, this would have happened millions of years ago. So obviously they didn't observe that. It's just not a scientific claim. If they want to, well, it's not, because science is based on what we observe. If they didn't observe the rapid divergence, then they're just making a claim as, you know, as baseless as anything you would find in a sacred religious book. So, and in my opinion, it's based on presuppositions.
The issue you run into there is there's cross data that continues to confirm the evolution hypothesis is being supported. Things like endogenous retroviruses, things like the fossil record, things like geology, and evolution is probably the best supported hypothesis in all of science, better than gravity, better than atomic theory.
Mm-hmm.
So
the other thing I'd like to mention, if I may, just really quick, to just jump in here with that before it gets far, I think that the presupposition can be a bit, and I'm not saying I'm not saying you're doing this, but I think sometimes when it's thrown into conversation, it can be a bit of a red herring, given the fact that, and we think about this in terms used in psychology with intelligibility. The fact of the matter is, as human beings, we all presuppose something from the outset. That's just the way we function in life. I presuppose that my senses are valid, that my memory is somewhat reliable, my experiences are somewhat reliable, etc. And so I use this. All human beings use these types of what could be defined as presuppositions to function in life. I don't think it's really applicable in every situation to lean on presupposition, just because if it boils down to it, everybody is basically starting from presupposition. What we should be doing is focusing on evidence and the amount of evidence and the credibility of the evidence, and taking the evidence on its own merit, as opposed to simply defaulting back to, well, you're presupposing something before you get into the evidence. And let's just look at the evidence isolated from the presupposition. Does that make sense?
I see exactly what you're saying. I guess what I'm trying to say is that if we're going to be doing science, we need to be eliminating, science, again, I know this is kind of a Kent Hovind line, but it's true. Science is based on observations. And what is the observation? The observation is that there's greater genetic divergence than would be predicted based on normal evolutionary, mutational rates. So instead of saying this is due to rapid divergence or whatever term they use, they should just say this is what is found, because they didn't observe the rapid divergence. They just assumed it happened based on it. That's what needs to have happened based on their evolutionary presuppositions.
But it's in
So
my data.
No, hold on. I have a better point for this. So in that way, would you assume that every time Objective goes out to test one of the hulls of the ships he designs, that he needs to first demonstrate that the laws of buoyancy are still holding true?
I don't think that'd be reasonable.
So it's not necessary to prove the things that, or to demonstrate, I shouldn't say prove because we're talking scientifically, to demonstrate the things that have already been demonstrated and are currently supported. Like, we don't have to do that every time we want to do an experiment.
That's exactly right. So when I design a hull, for example, I work with the physics that have been well established. So I understand, that the upwards pressure must be greater than the downwards pressure in order to create buoyancy. And I don't have to go through and draw all that out. I have to work within that confine. I presuppose that's true because of things that we do observe. And I think that forensic science is another great thing to look at. We don't observe the murder to be able to ascertain that there was a murder or that there was a murderer. So it just really depends on this observable science. I hear people use this term, and it's really, I think, a misunderstanding of what science can actually produce. It's by looking at the surrounding data and the effects of something that we can work backwards, which I think is how this conversation started. Is we're not observing the first single-celled organism mutate or duplicate or do any of these things. What we're doing is observing what we have now, and we're working backwards systematically and logically.
I understand. All right, I think I found the closest I'm going to get to what I want to see. So I just want to highlight. Okay, so I found something here. So divergence and selection. So let's just read this real fast. Overall, sequence comparisons among the complete 8 genomes revealed greater divergence than previously estimated. So this isn't just humans and chimps. This is all of the so-called great apes.
Sure.
Indeed, 12 to 27.3% of an 8 genome failed to align or was inconsistent with a simple 1-to-1 alignment, thereby introducing gaps. Gap divergence showed a 5-fold to 15-fold difference in the number of affected metabases when compared to single nucleotide variant. So what they are saying here, what they are admitting, which I think is devastating for evolution, is that some of the ape species are up to a quarter of their genome is different from the others, which is shocking when it used to be claimed that it was only like 1, 2, maybe 3% difference. We now know that
only between humans and chimps.
I understand
it's never
that
that close for humans and orangutans or humans and gorillas.
Well, all of these creatures supposedly share according to evolutionary theory, share a very close common ancestor, and the claim is that the genetic similarities demonstrate the evolutionary relatedness.
So in order to falsify that hypothesis,
let me just finish real fast. Yeah, real fast. So the fact that there is a quarter of the genome or more doesn't align between some of these species is extremely significant. And a lot of people don't know that. They think that the genetic similarities they're not. We're up to 1/4% different from apes. Imagine like a sea sponge or a whale, So I just want to put that fact out there. It's not 99%. It's 85 up to 75%. All right. So let's go ahead. What did you say?
So it's only 99% with chimps. It's different.
No, it's not. It's not 99% with chimps. It's 80.
Yes, it is. 2, let me finish my point. The only way this would be a defeater for the idea of the great ape clade, which you called the so-called great ape clade, which I think is silly, but fine. The great ape clade would only be defeated if you could find an animal that was more closely related. And you won't.
Okay, so you said I was wrong about the 99% with chimps, so I'm just going to have to throw this out there. So this is the results. At least 12.5% to possibly 13.3% of chimp and human genomes represents a gap difference between the 2 genomes. So again, you're just factually incorrect. This new study has shown that humans and chimps are, and again, this says chimps and humans, so it's right there. It's not the other apes. So this new study has shattered the evolutionary myth that humans and chimps are 99% similar or something like that. Humans and chimps are probably at most 87% similar genetically. So we need to update.
A larger genome than we do.
I understand that, but we're not 99% similar genetically to chimps. It's just not. It's just a lie at this point. Okay, I know a lot of you. Okay, you can disagree all you want, but this is what the scientific paper just demonstrated, and these are the scientists.
Well, no, it's saying it's a 13% straight difference if we don't account for gaps, which every geneticist does, because there are gaps between my genome and yours, but we're both still Homo sapiens.
Okay, the gaps are places where our genes don't align. So they're not. We're not. So okay, so there's a third when you align the genomes and you try to get an alignment. There's a 13% difference, not a 1% difference. Okay, we need to get that clear. All right. So the 99% myth is no longer true. I'm glad I was able to provide that knowledge to everybody. So the problem with that is the very claim is that the genetic relatedness is based on genetic similarity. Okay, so we just found out that humans and chimps are not as closely genetically related as they originally thought. So but that's up to y'all to figure out. For me, I don't care because I never thought humans and chimps were evolutionary related. But for you all, the new data is suggesting that humans and chimps just simply are not as genetically related as was once claimed by the scientists. So I don't know how you respond to that.
Well, there are two things. One, geneticists have already dealt with this problem, and we have the BLAST program that shows the alignments and accounts for these gaps between individual humans, between humans and other animals, and between any two genomes you want to compare. However, even if I gave you the biggest number, if I gave you the Jeffrey Tompkins 70%, humans and chimps are 70% similar. One, why are they 70% similar? And two, is anything on the planet closer?
Also, some guy named Eric wants to join. I
don't know who Eric
is. I told Eric Lionheart. I see him there. Eric, right now it is just going to be me and the three people on the panel, and there might I think I have an open panel after I have a discussion with them, but we're going to go a few hours with the people here now.
I just wanted to make sure you knew he was there in case he was somebody important.
I'm sorry, Eric. I want to keep this as focused as possible. I want to deal with the arguments. Another thing is that there was a discovery a few years ago. Actually, a number of years ago now. This is NBC News, so they're not going to be peddling creationist claims.
Well, no, but they're also not in any way, shape, or form science journal.
I understand that, but it's not based on their fact. It's based on So there was a skull that was discovered, or it was a number of skulls that were discovered in Georgia in this was back in 2013, actually, so 12 years ago.
Okay, so country Georgia, not state Georgia.
Correct. The Soviet Republic of Georgia. And what they found out is that these skulls, it's not just one skull, so the title is misleading. But because there are a number of skulls discovered in a single cave, they demonstrated a variety of basically morphological characteristics. And what they determined based on this these skulls is that a number of supposed ancient human ancestors never really existed, and it says that right here.
It would require them to be reclassified as part of Homo erectus. That's certainly an argument in science. Homo erectus is kind of a junk clade. It's we're not absolutely certain where this particular hominid goes, so we're going to put it there. Homo rudolfensis and Homo habilis, who are in there, are both sometimes put into Homo erectus, so they're called Homo erectus habilis and Homo erectus rudolfensis. There's heidelbergensis is in this category. Depending on the anthropologist you talk to, Homo erectus is either very, very large or very, very small. And it is really difficult to date human bones, or not to date them, but to classify them, because everything in genus Homo is human. So the differences are teensy.
Yeah. Well, okay. So there were 5 skulls that were. Yep. I just want to relate the information, then we can discuss it.
Yeah.
So there are a number of skulls, and based on this, and you were talking about how earlier you were talking about how there's this gradual progression from Australopithecines to human ancestors. Okay.
Well, Australopithecines are human ancestors, but I
okay,
understand what you mean.
yeah, that is a claim. Yes. So what I'm trying to show you is that these early hominins they're within a morphological range that it appears that they are actually all just part of one potentially species, and the reason we know is because these skeletons were found. So let me just read this, and I'm just going to cut to the chase, so you can read the context if you want later. If the conclusion holds up, the skull discovery would require a major rewrite for the story of early human evolution. Such species as Homo habilis and Homo rudolfensis, I think you mentioned those, long a part of humanity's bushy.
I had already read this paragraph.
Okay, could be folded into a wide-ranging species known as Homo erectus. So before these skulls were found, the scientific quote-unquote fact was that Homo habilis and Homo rudolfensis were separate species. But these skulls were discovered, and then the scientific fact changed, quote-unquote, because it was never really a fact. It was just a claim based on interpretations of data. So what I'm trying to show you is that these claims being made by these evolutionary scientists and the human evolution, they aren't really facts in the strongest sense of the word. They are interpretations of data which could be overturned in time. So I just want to point that data out as well. So you can respond to that as you want as well.
Well, that's fine. As I mentioned before, in science, we never accept a hypothesis. We only fail to reject it. So in this case, this new data challenged a hypothesis that was held that Homo habilis and Homo rudolfensis are their own individual species rather than a subspecies of Homo erectus. However, because they were all found together and in this one place, that challenged the idea, it requires more data and gives the argument that Homo erectus is a bigger clade than the people who classified Homo rudolfensis and Homo habilis as their own species originally thought. This doesn't change that these are still changing species over time. It's just we're trying to find the right box to put them in, and that gets messy.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to, I think if before these skulls had come along and been discovered, I think if someone had challenged the existence of, because what the evolutionary scientists try to do is they try to make it like there's a gradation or a transition from one form to another, and they use these varying species to accomplish that. And if someone comes along and says, "Well, I don't think these things ever existed," they would be called a science denier.
Well, if you said those individuals didn't exist, yeah, because
No,
we got their skeletons. If
well,
you wanted to argue that the species didn't exist, like it wasn't actually a species, it was just more Homo erectus, we could have that conversation. I don't think anyone would call you a science denier for that. Anthropologists are still arguing about that right now. But
right, I guess my point is simply this: that people who deny the data points are if you had come along and said, "I don't think Homo habilis is a real thing. I think it's just early humans," or something like that, that you would be called a science leader, because the science is that Homo habilis is a real thing. But we now know that Homo habilis is probably just basically it could have been a member of this Homo erectus thing that they claim also exists. So I'm just trying to show that the science isn't when it's not based on observations, but rather interpretations of data, like human evolution and all evolution. It's not like a fact that is solid. It's people's interpretations, and that leads to potential basically confusion and lack of certainty that should be acknowledged. Okay, so
well, there's always a lack of certainty. Unfortunately, you can't know anything. So we do our best with the data we have.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me just touch one thing before we move too far past it. I think that what we should do is, Yenek, I believe it was Yenek, he did mention, he gave you the solution to the genome similarity thing that has actually been refuted. The 70%, 80, 84, 80, whatever it was actually well refuted by Gutzit Gibson, actually posted a video showing what Yenek had mentioned, and it kind of just got thrown out there without a really good explanation. But when we take out the gaps, when we account for the gaps, this solves this problem. And I don't know if one of you is able to actually post her video that she recently did talk. Okay, perfect. So it's actually, there is good data, and she really lays it out. I would chop it up and if I tried to explain it, but it's not just, we're not just hand waving that away. I just want to make that clear to everyone in the audience and in this discussion. There is a real that has been addressed. It has been thoroughly addressed and in my opinion debunked. And it's been shown how it's debunked because when you account for the gaps, that number goes up way up to, like, I think she said something like 98.5 or something like that, or 99, somewhere in there percent similarity.
Wait, hold on. Object. I'm sorry to interrupt. Yes, if you get rid of the differences, there aren't as many differences. I mean, of course, no one's denying that. The point is, the original claim by scientists or whoever was that if you align the complete genomes of humans and chimps, you only get 1 to 2% divergence.
Yeah.
But now they have done a complete sequencing, and we now know that when you align the complete genomes, yes, 87% is very similar, but that is very different from saying 98% is basically the same. Okay, so
there are duplications and other things that factor into that.
I understand that, but
Yeah, there are.
A 13% difference, people think that's a small thing. No, for evolutionary mutation rates, that is a because think about it, humans, we diverge from chimps. Humans diverge as a line from chimps, however many millions of years ago.
About 5.
The amount of okay, so let's say 5 million years. The amount of genetic variation that has evolved in the human lineage specifically is like 0.001% across the entire genome. But think about that. So how did a 13% difference arise between humans and chimps in that same time frame, when between humans and interspecies, the genetic variation is only like 0.1%? This is a huge problem for evolution, for timelines. It isn't explained by simple mutation rates, because if the mutation rates are the same, why is it so much bigger between chimps and apes than between human members of the human species?
It's one, because even if we just ungapped everybody, if we decided to say we're gonna count every difference, every single nucleotide difference, so we're gonna do ungapped research, it would lower the percentages for everyone. Humans would still be closest to chimps. It wouldn't change the nested hierarchy at all. It would just change everybody's percentage difference by some number. It wouldn't be a constant. However, the issue with your challenge with how did the 13% difference happen in one line is it didn't happen in one line. The universal common ancestor wasn't a chimp. It was a Miocene ape that we aren't really certain exactly which one, because we can't know, unfortunately. However, the chimps would have been getting their own genetic differences from that Miocene ape, as we also developed our own genetic differences from that Miocene ape. So you're looking at about a 7% difference in each direction, assuming it was an equal difference.
Well, all right, let's think about it this way. Let's try to visualize this. Let's go back 5 million years. There's a population of some type of ape that is the base species for humans and chimps. Mm-hmm. So at that point, humans and chimps are 100% similar, right?
If one assumes that there are just humans and chimps in that population, but that's
there's no humans and chimps yet. There's only
there's only these Miocene apes. These Miocene apes would be within 1%, probably within 0.1% of each other if they're all the same species.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So at some point there's a divergence. All right. Yeah. Let's go 300,000 years. You have a population of proto-humans and a population of proto-chimps, right?
If you want to classify them that way, sure.
Yeah, okay. So at this point, they're probably still like very closely genetically related to the Miocene ape from which they diverged, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So that the human lineage will progress towards humans, and the chimp lineage will progress towards chimps. Correct. All right. Now, if mutation rates are assumed to be more or less constant, okay, you have to explain why between humans there is only a 0.1% difference, and within chimps there is a 0.1% difference, but between humans and chimps there is a 13% difference, which is a lot of genetic variation when you come to base nucleotides and how many mutations would have been necessary. So the timelines just simply don't make sense. Okay, I think special creation actually makes much better, is a much better explanation of what happened. These things weren't genetically related and then diverged. They were created as separate species, to me, because the timelines don't allow for the
Why
amount of
did God
genetic.
give us all the same viruses?
Well, that's a theological question, not a scientific question. So
Well,
let's
all
just
of
stick
the
to
evidence
science.
points to us having the same genes. We are, even at the lowest, if I give you Jeffrey Tompkins' biggest number, I give Jeffrey Tompkins the biggest win in the world, we're 70% the same, and we have, I think, 98% the same endogenous retroviruses.
Okay.
So we've got a lot of the same genetic code.
We do. There's no denying that. Okay.
So-
Let's just get philosophical on that point alone. Let's ignore the actual percentage. I will give you 98%. How about that?
Sure.
Even though it's not, we know it's not anymore, but let's just say it was. From a philosophical standpoint, do genetic similarities between species actually prove anything? Let me lay out. I know you've heard the claim, the argument, but I want to lay it out for the audience, if anyone's watching. Okay. Here's what I want to say.
Mhm.
Let's take humans and chimps again as our example. You have humans.
Let's take two humans.
Well,
Does genetic similarity between two humans demonstrate relatedness?
it can do that between humans.
Are you more related to your direct relatives than you are to literally any other human?
Yeah, but hold on. I understand where you're going to go. I want to lay out the argument. The argument is this: that because let's say humans are whatever they are, and chimps are 98% similar.
Mm-hmm.
This could just as easily be explained by them being created with similar morphologies, and thus you would expect that the genetic similarities would be the same because the genes are basically the operating program of the creature. So morphologically similar creatures would, within reason, it would be created with similar genes to one another by an intelligent designer. Okay, so just the fact that they're 98% similar doesn't actually prove anything in and of itself. So go ahead. But so go with what you're saying.
Do you have children, Philosophy?
Not at the moment.
Do you have siblings?
I do.
So is it demonstrable that your siblings and your direct parents are the closest related people on the planet to you? Is that demonstrable through genetics?
As far as I'm aware, yes, it is.
Okay, and we can create a radial pattern outward. Your grandparents, outside of your parents and your siblings, would be the next most closely related to you, and then your great-grandparents and their parents and their parents and so on and so forth, correct?
Correct.
Is there any reason to believe, going all the way back, if we assume a creationist perspective, to Adam, that would ever cease to be true?
Well, the claim of creationism is that you can't basically evolve beyond your own kind. So
Well, I'm not even talking about that. I'm not getting to outside of humans yet. I've only gotten from today back to Adam. Every human backwards.
okay, so every human. Okay, within humanity, yes, we can.
So cool. So from the creationist standpoint, that would be the entirety of the universe, all the way back from today to day 6 the universe existed. I could trace your genetic history back and assume that whoever is more closely genetically tied to you is more related to you than anybody else.
Okay.
Why would I assume it stops there? Because that nested hierarchy in cladistics that we've taken the time to construct is backed up by genetics. Chimps are the closest related animal to us, though bonobos are the closest related animal to chimps, which is why bonobos and chimps are pan and we're homo.
Well, because we all know. Well, here's why. Because the very question we're debating is whether evolution happened or whether basically God or whatever you want to call it, and designer created these creations specially. So here's the facts. All there are living organisms, and they're the basis of their being is their genetic code. So God's going to put a genetic code in every single creature, and if you have two creatures that look very similar, like humans and chimps, then it makes sense that God is going to use a similar genetic code. You don't It's if so, you see what I'm saying? Like the genetic
So did
similarity.
God create each human individually? Like we weren't made
Yeah,
through sexual reproduction. God just snapped and we came into existence.
I guess the difference is we obviously observe humans creating other humans, but we've never seen one type of creature evolve into another type of creature.
Because that's not how it
We
works.
can't. That's against the law of monophyly.
So how evolution works is it's a gradual change. So you'll never ever see like a
Right.
dog give birth to a cat. I mean, that's a bad example, but
I've never. But here's the thing: I've never said a dog will give birth to a cat.
no, I know you
But
did.
the claim is that a dog will eventually evolve into something other than a dog, and we've never seen that.
In fact, that's impossible. That would break evolution. So there are two things you could do to break evolution. You could find a living animal that isn't related to any other animal on the planet. Or
Okay, hold on.
could.
All right, you're confusing me.
Yep.
You just wait. Hold on. Let me clarify. I want to clarify. I'm gonna ask you a question. You just said that a dog can never evolve into anything other than a dog, but that's what exactly. Well, hold on. That's what needs to happen for evolution to be true. So please.
No, that breaks the law of monophyly. Let me explain. The law of monophyly is you cannot outgrow your heritage. Humans are still apes. Humans are still monkeys. Humans are still mammals. Humans are still tetrapods, which means humans are still fish. Humans are still chordates, which means we're still technically worms. We haven't outgrown any of that. It just becomes less useful to call it that, mostly because fish is a bad.
Let me ask you a question.
Biology.
All right. Yep. So this is where it's getting into the kind of absurd territory because you're making statements that to me seem, and again, this is my perception. I'm not saying actually, they seem completely ridiculous.
They're not,
because,
but I can explain.
Okay, let me explain. Let me clarify why I think that.
Yep.
Let's go back to the beginning of life on Earth. Whatever it was. Let's say it was a some type of amoeba. Let's just call it the amoeba, the single-celled amoeba. All right. What you're saying is that it is impossible for things to evolve beyond that simple-celled amoeba. So humans are still that single-celled amoeba. It's kind of like the argumento ad absurdum that I'm throwing at you. Are you trying to argue that humans are a single-celled amoeba?
We're still eukaryotes, so yes. We could be classified that way.
Okay, you're assuming that the first creature was a eukaryote. What I'm trying to tell you...
No, it would be a prokaryote, probably.
Okay, so...
endosymbiosis created eukaryotes.
Okay, all right. Well, okay, that's not something... I guess my point is, let's just say the first creature was a prokaryote, a single-celled bacteria of some sort.
Yep.
So you're saying that nothing ever evolved beyond that single-celled prokaryote. We're still the single-celled prokaryote.
I would have trouble with your phrasing because evolution doesn't have goals, so you can't evolve beyond something. You just
okay. So you said, hold on. You said we started with dogs, and I made the claim that for evolution to be true, dogs have to eventually be able to evolve into something other than dogs. Then hold on. Then you claimed no. You'll never evolve beyond anything that's a dog.
You'll never evolve into something else, is what I said.
Okay. So that's the law of monophyly.
Correct.
Okay, so I said let's take it to the extreme.
Yep.
The first living creature was some sort of single-celled bacteria. I call it an amoeba. All right.
Yeah.
So according to the law of monophyly, humans are still the single-celled amoeba. Correct.
We could still be classified that way. We have all of those characteristics.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That is incredibly absurd in my opinion, but that's your argument. So that's
I can show you why it's true. Are you made of cells?
I am, but I'm not a single-celled bacteria.
No. Do those cells have an enclosed nucleus?
Yes.
Does that nucleus contain DNA?
Yes.
Congratulations, you're eukaryote.
Okay, but you're talking about broad classification.
You're an incredibly derived eukaryote. We have a lot more traits than that. However, you're still a eukaryote. You'll never stop being one.
So is there a fundamental difference between a human and a single-celled amoeba from which we all evolved?
I don't know about a fundamental one. They're demonstrable ones. We're obviously made of more than one cell.
So when we're talking about classifying things in clades according to the law of monophyly,
Yep.
We have technically not evolved past the primordial single cell prokaryote, is what you're claiming.
Well, again, you can't evolve past something.
Right.
Because you
Right.
can't.
Right. So we have not
Evolution
evolved
doesn't have
past,
a goal. It is an unguided process.
so we are not fundamentally different from the single cell prokaryote from which everything evolved, is what you're claiming.
Again, I would have difficulty with the word fundamentally. We are demonstrably different, and we are still eukaryotes. However, whatever the first cell was, it was probably a prokaryote, not a eukaryote. However, just to make things simple, whatever the first eukaryote population was, we're not exactly that, but we could be classified as that.
We could be well. Okay, so we're getting. First of all, we've admitted that eukaryotes arose after prokaryotes. So you have to go from prokaryotes to eukaryotes. Okay, so
Yep.
we've established that. Okay, so that's one break in the law of monophyly right there. So we have to get from. So eukaryotes are just prokaryotes.
Yep, we're a subset.
Okay, so this is all just language, and there's no fundamental difference between any type of organism and another. So
yeah, we all come from the same universal common ancestor.
Okay, so humans, there's no essential difference between a human. According to evolution and the law of monophyly, there's no essential difference between a single-celled amoeba and a human being.
Again, there are demonstrable ones, but
I
don't know what an essential difference would be.
Here's what I'm trying to get at. You're making the argument based on your understanding of evolution that something cannot evolve to something fundamentally other than what it originally is. And we started with dogs. So I'm taking it back to something that's clearly very different from a human, which is a single-celled bacteria, which is where everything started. And you have to be consistent, you have to say that we are not essentially or fundamentally different. We haven't evolved past that yet. We are still
evolution isn't guided. It doesn't have a goal. You
I
can't
understand
evolve
that.
past something.
But I'm trying to get you right. So
you want to make a distinction on essential or fundamental difference, but I don't know what that means. So tell me what that means.
So just like a dog can never evolve to something other than dog, a single-celled prokaryote can never evolve into something other than a single-celled prokaryote, right?
It can't evolve into something that isn't a single-celled prokaryote.
Okay, so but humans exist in there. They're not single-celled prokaryotes, right?
We are. We are still living things. We are part of the domain of life.
We are single-celled prokaryotes, or aren't we? I'm trying to. This is what you're saying. We are single-celled prokaryotes.
Yep, we're just built differently, though.
Okay,
a lot of them.
Yeah, I'm glad. I don't know if the audience is as perplexed as I am, but you all are making. This is what you're saying. You're saying that humans are single-celled prokaryotes, and to me, that sounds
we can be classified that way.
Let me try.
Okay. So human. Hold on. All right. So humans. What you just said is humans can be classified as single-celled prokaryotes. That was what you just said.
I'm pretty sure that's true. I'd have to double check because the epigenetics of single-cell evolution is a little weird. But at the very least, if we stick to the amoeba situation, we're definitely still eukaryotes.
Okay, so if I went to a little kid and pointed to another human and said, that's a single-celled prokaryote, the kid would just instantly be, yeah, that's science. Is that...
Well, a kid would
be a little confused because they wouldn't understand those terms. But if you explained what that meant, then the kid would say, well, that's not certainly useful to me because it's like calling a human a fish, which is technically true, but also not helpful.
Okay, so humans are fish. Humans are single-celled prokaryotes. I'm glad we've established this. Okay, so we can move on from that. I feel like
you're also a deuterostome. There's a lot. Aaron Rod does a great video called The Classification of Life that shows all of these things, I think, from eukaryotes to humans, because he also mentions the epigenetics of single-celled evolution is weird.
I just want to point out that I've gotten you to a point where, based on your understanding of evolution, you are willing to make the claim that humans are single-celled prokaryotes.
Well, I'm willing to make the claim that they are prokaryotes.
Okay.
They're rather obviously not single-celled.
But prokaryotes are universally single-celled organisms.
No, because they're part of the domain of life, and some of us have evolved multicellularity.
Okay.
We're eukaryotic, but we're not single-celled because
of
multiple cells. A lot of them.
Much in the same way that some of them evolved nuclei.
Okay.
Probably through endosymbiosis, which technically might not be really evolution.
Let me ask it this way. Let me try to get at it from another angle.
Yeah.
Did the single cell prokaryote ever evolve into anything other than a single cell prokaryote?
It didn't evolve into anything that isn't also a prokaryote.
Except for eukaryotes, right?
No, they're also prokaryotes.
So eukaryotes are prokaryotes. So what's the difference between a eukaryote and a prokaryote?
An unfolded nucleus.
Okay,
They're
so
subset, though.
so wait. Again, the claim that they evolved is basically a presupposition. It's not something you observe. So a eukaryote is a prokaryote with a nucleus.
With an unfolded nucleus, yes.
Okay, so basically, it's just for me. No, a eukaryote is a eukaryote, and a prokaryote is a prokaryote. There's a fundamental difference, and the difference is that there isn't. Okay, well there is, because that's why we look at these.
Do you have mitochondria?
Okay. I'm just trying to get you to understand that
I understand your confusion. I'm trying to help you.
Yeah. The confusion is this: humans are clearly not single-celled prokaryotes.
No,
right?
we are multi-celled prokaryotes.
Well, prokaryotes don't have a cell nucleus. You just said that, but humans do
Right.
have a cell. Okay, so humans have a cell nucleus.
We also have mitochondria.
Okay, so
which was originally
definitionally, prokaryotes do not have a cell nucleus, right?
They don't have to not have one.
They do. That's the whole. All right, let me. I'm going to look up the definition of prokaryotes right now.
Mm-hmm.
Prokaryote definition.
How come I can't see your screen?
I will share my screen so we can do this together. Hold on, give me a second.
I was making sure it didn't disappear or something, and like it wasn't supposed to.
All right, I unshared, so let me share again.
I've never been on this app before.
Yeah, I see. Okay,
yeah, so we don't classify things by the things they don't have. We classify them by the things they do have.
All right. Well, okay. So this is the first thing that pops up. So this is prokaryote. I looked up prokaryote definition.
Yep.
All right. So let's try to zoom out so we can see the entire answer. Why is it doing that?
It's doing what?
All right. Okay. So any of various microorganisms. So we're starting with microorganisms. Humans are not a microorganism. Of the domains archaea and bacteria, characterized by the absence of a distinct membrane-bound nucleus. Okay, so here's the definition of prokaryote. By definition, a prokaryote does not have a nucleus. We've already established that. Humans have a nucleus in our cells. So by definition, humans are not prokaryotes, correct?
Yes. By the dictionary definition, that's true. By the scientific definition, it's not. So this is a much different field.
All right, we're going to biology dictionary. All right, so hopefully these people know the scientific. I don't know who biology dictionary. I doubt it's a creationist source. Okay, so let's zoom in here. Prokaryotes are unicellular organisms. Okay, so right there, humans are not unicellular. Prokaryotes are unicellular organisms that consist of a single prokaryotic cell.
Okay, you started as a unicellular organism.
Okay, fair enough. Prokaryotic cells are simple cells that do not have a true nucleus or other cell organelles.
Yeah, we gained those later.
Okay, so but by definition, we are not a prokaryote, right?
We could be classified as one by the scientific definition, but
no. This is the there's not a scientific definition and a colloquial. This is the definition of prokaryote. This is what science has come up with. This is not something that creationists are putting on the internet to confuse people.
No, I'm not saying it is. I'm saying they can be. The definition of this word is really only useful as a contrast to eukaryotes. Because when we talk about prokaryotes now, we're talking about bacteria. And when you're talking about bacteria, you're usually talking about disease. So it's not helpful to talk about them in a way in which when they interact with eukaryotes, they are distinguishable from.
I want to circle back. Are humans a prokaryote?
Yes.
They are. Well, how? Okay, so a prokaryote, by definition, the scientific definition is that prokaryotes do not have a nucleus. So how can humans be prokaryotes and violate the very definition of being a prokaryote?
Because we're also eukaryotes.
We gained things.
So okay, this is the problem. You have to you are actually the ones denying science right now because
I'm not denying science.
Creationists did not come up with the definition of prokaryote.
Okay,
so the definition of prokaryote is that you do not
Gentlemen,
have
let's keep the science denier. That seems a little ad hominem on both.
Okay.
Just
Okay. Fair enough. You're right. Let's not go there. But to me, here from my perspective, this is my opinion. Your claim that one type of organism, according to evolution, cannot evolve into another type of organism is just patently absurd and ridiculous. And there are a million different ways I could prove that. You're trying to hold on. You made a claim according to the law of monophyly that an organism cannot evolve beyond its original essence or type or kind or whatever term you want to use.
Yeah.
That would have to mean that humans are still a single-celled prokaryote, which clearly we are not. So you are in my opinion, denying just basic observations of reality at that point.
No.
No, you're making an appeal to definition, which is fine. And however, things don't stay the same. So the prokaryote went through endosymbiosis, picked up mitochondria as well as nuclei, and then continued to evolve. So you got eukaryotes. It then gained multicellularity, and you got deuterostomes. Deuterostomes evolved into both animals and plants.
Okay, none of this was observed within the observable human history. We didn't see these things happen. These are things that are.
Here's the fun thing: is it has been. You have mitochondria right now. Yes.
All right.
You're aware that mitochondrial DNA exists.
Right.
And it's different than yours.
Okay.
It's different than your nucleal DNA.
Okay.
So we know that mitochondria were originally a separate organism because they have their own DNA. So they were captured by eukaryotes or prokaryotes. I'm not really sure exactly the order of the endosymbiosis. They began a symbiotic relationship.
Okay. So I'm going to write this down. This is another point of discussion. Mitochondria.
Yep.
Were originally a separate organism.
Correct.
Yenek, can I ask a question? So would it be fair to say that we are prokaryotes, but eukaryotes are kind of a subset of prokaryotes?
That's difficult to define, again, because of the epigenetics of unicellular evolution. Right. It gets a little wonky because endosymbiosis isn't descent within. It's not genetically inherited.
Okay.
So
all right.
Single cell evolution's a pain.
Let's talk about mitochondria. The evolution of mitochondria.
Is that the last thing you want to talk about? Because I've got about 8 minutes. I'd rather talk about whatever is most important to you.
Well, this is okay. We've barely scratched the surface of things I would like to discuss with you. Honestly,
I understand.
But since I think these are data points. A person's belief in evolution is based on data points.
Yep.
And this is one data point within your mind that you think supports the general theory about it. So I want to go at a fundamentally philosophical level here, okay, with this specific point, because you're saying you claimed we know because mitochondria have different DNA than your cell nucleus, that we know these things were. Let's talk about this and just show how I think there's a serious. First of all, you realize that the production of mitochondria is coded for in our DNA, in our nuclear DNA, right?
They're self-replicating.
So when there's when a sperm meets with an egg, does it bring mitochondria with it?
It does. It's in the ova. That's why your mitochondrial DNA only comes from your mother.
All right. Okay. So you educated me on that point, but let me ask you this: do mitochondria exist independently of a living organism? Do we see them floating around in the ocean and just being there by themselves?
They'd probably be another kind of bacteria by this point.
Okay, so there's no evidence of mitochondria, something like a mitochondria just existing independently.
There are plenty. There's any number of different kinds of bacteria, all of which have their.
I understand that, but a mitochondria is an organelle within it can't function or live apart from the rest of the cell and the organelle.
I'm pretty sure it could if it could get out of the cell, but it doesn't need to.
So if scientists took a mitochondria out and put it in a favorable environment, it would survive on its own.
I think so.
They would?
Possibly.
I'm not certain because I don't understand exactly the microbiology behind that. However, it has its own DNA, it replicates itself, and it is the thing that makes energy for cells, so it should be able to make energy for itself. However,
Okay.
I'm not certain if that's true.
But we don't.
Possible, but it's no, we don't know for sure.
Right, and we don't know. I think if these things were floating around in the water, we would see them and we would be talking about this. So the fact that you all
Probably.
don't know. Okay, so there's no evidence of mitochondria surviving on their own outside of a cell. Okay, we've established that. Could it be?
No, we haven't. We've established that mitochondria are different organisms from us, and that they are inside our cells currently, and that other single-celled organisms with their own DNA exist outside of us. So it's certainly possible.
Yeah, but
however, whatever the original mitochondria was has almost certainly, because it's been dividing for billions of years, evolved.
Yeah.
Any number of ways.
Yeah, so you can make that story up, but the fact is we don't observe this. So the science, as far as observation goes, the empirical observation is with me that we don't observe mitochondria existing independently of some host organism. Correct?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
The bacteria all the time.
But those bacteria are not mitochondria.
They are a single-cell archaea unit organism. It's the same thing as what a mitochondria is.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. A mitochondria is a single organelle within a cell that produces
that replicates
energy.
it for itself with its own DNA, and is in a symbiotic relationship.
Okay, so give me an example of a mitochondria that exists independently of itself.
E. coli.
E. coli is a mitochondria.
Well, no, it's a bacteria. Again.
Oh, right, exactly.
Whatever the original organism was that got absorbed by our cells, it doesn't exist in that form anymore.
Right.
Because it divided billions and billions and billions of times in the billions of years since that happened. Because this would have been one of the first things that happened in living organisms' evolution.
Right, so that's a very fascinating story. There's just no evidence.
Does your cell have mitochondria in it right now?
It does, but
does that mitochondria have DNA that is separate from yours?
You're talking about it does, but it could have been created like that. You have to understand that God can create a mitochondria.
But you would have to demonstrate that a God exists first, and you can't.
The whole claim is that you're trying to build a case for evolution.
Yeah, and this is one of them. Endosymbiosis of the first single. Yeah, but we
didn't observe endosymbiosis. It's a story.
We have a different kind of organism in our cells now. It is.
All right, let me ask you this: have we ever observed endosymbiosis of mitochondria?
Of mitochondria specifically, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because we would need to go back 3 billion years. But we have seen the evolution of multicellularity in single-celled organisms.
Hold on one second.
As a response to predation.
What did you just claim?
We have observed in the lab the evolution of multicellularity.
Okay, no, we haven't. We've observed I know they're talking about the algae that forms a colony. If you take out the algae and put it by itself, it's still unicellular. It just forms a colony. It's not multicellular. They don't code for multiple cells. The genes didn't change. It's just that's not correct. Okay, so we haven't observed multicellularity. Okay. Second of all, you're appealing to a story you have in your mind.
No, I'm appealing to the data that's available now.
I'm talking about. I want to go back to mitochondria.
Yeah, I'm on the same thing. Mitochondria are a separate organism inside of our cells right now.
An organism is a self-replicating, self-sustaining creature.
Which mitochondria is. I've already told you that.
Well, how do you know that? How do you know that? But it can't do all those things. If you took it out of a human cell, it couldn't survive on its own.
Yeah, and if you took a flea off a dog, it would die.
Yeah, but a flea can
self-replicate. So can mitochondria.
Yeah, but if a flea will reproduce with another flea.
Mitochondria are single-celled. They reproduce through mitosis.
So but we've never seen a mitochondria, an organelle like that, floating around surviving on its own. And
we see bacteria all the time. You're not going to get away from that.
but bacteria are not mitochondria. A mitochondria.
No, but they are single-celled organisms that don't have organelles because they're bacteria, and they exist outside the human body. They also exist inside the human body. They just don't exist in the cells.
All right. Can mitochondria exist outside of a cell?
How come nobody's commenting?
Who knows?
I mean, that's off topic, but I'm just wondering because I've been sitting here waiting to see comments. And
Okay.
Well, there's only 4
30
people watching,
minutes.
which I think 3 of them are us.
Wait, nobody's
hold on one
watching
second.
us anymore? Oh, man.
Okay, so again, mitochondria do not exist outside of cells. They are organelles that function within eukaryotic cells. They are essential for energy production and other cellular processes, but they cannot survive independently. So this is, again...
Okay, where's the AI pulling that data from?
It looks like Wikipedia.
Oh, well, there's PubMed saying forms of extracellular mitochondria and their impact on health. So extracellular mitochondria would mean mitochondria outside of the cell.
Yay, we got a comment.
Hey, Von Eric. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, mitochondria can cross cell boundaries. An overview of the biological. Blah 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 blah. From looks like the National Institute of Health. The diversity and coexistence of extracellular mitochondria. Yeah, so apparently it is possible. I was wrong.
Can mitochondria? Right, let me ask you: do we find mitochondria outside of living cells, or existing outside of living cells? This is interesting to me because I might be wrong, but
Yeah, like I said, Yenek, he knows things that I've never even thought about.
Yeah,
I don't know how he does it. Sometimes
mitochondria suggests mitochondria is descended from specialized bacteria. Yeah, origin and diversification of mitochondria, the evolution of mitochondria.
All right, so I'm reading here: biology, stack exchange. Mitochondria are symbionts that no longer free living. Some of their essential genes have been incorporated into the host genomes, and some remain within. Okay, that's interesting. There are essential genes of mitochondria that are.
Yeah, well, go ahead and read that next sentence.
After
billion years of coevolution, they have
okay,
become organelles, and which means they were not originally organelles. They're symbiotes, which means again a separate organism living together.
Do nuclear genes code for mitochondria? That's what I want to know. Okay, mitochondrial replication. This is Wikipedia, which again I don't take as a very authoritative source. Mitochondrial replication is controlled by nuclear genes. So again, everything you said is a story based on things that you haven't, but the actual science suggests there's no modern evidence that your story is true. It's all post.
There was. You scrolled past about 6 studies of the endosymbiosis hypothesis.
Oh, okay. Here it is. So I'm going to share my screen now. So let's just get some facts out there. I'm going to. I stopped sharing. Sorry about that. Let's go back.
You did the opposite. Try again.
All right. So let's see here. All right, this is right here. Despite having its own circular genome, the majority of mitochondrial proteins are encoded by nuclear DNA. Okay, that's a kill shot right there. So that would mean that according to what we currently observe, mitochondria cannot exist without the host organism's nuclear DNA. But the thing is, what you're going to claim is, well, not in the beginning. Well, here's the thing. For according to the modern science, these things can't exist apart from being. We just said the mitochondrial proteins are essential to the
function has already been shown as the implication. I'm sorry, I'm reading the entire abstract rather than just a sentence. Disrupting the when directly associated with also contributes to the keywords mitochondria, nucleus, mitochondria form double membrane RNA evolving from an engulfed protobacterium. So even this paper says it evolved from a protobacterium.
Where does it say that?
Scroll up. I'm sorry, scroll down in the It's under mitochondrial form and function. Mitochondria, a double membrane organelle evolving from an engulfed alpha protobacterium, is colloquially referred to as the powerhouse of the cell.
That is the papers of the author giving a nod to their evolution god. That is not based on any scientific
Evolution.
Oh, okay. So when the paper agrees with you, it's absolutely scientifically correct. But when it disagrees with you, it's just
right.
Oh, they have to pay homage to the evolution gods that don't exist because
right. That's exactly what's going on here. They have to.
I do enjoy a double standard about the double membrane organelle. Good job. That's fun.
It said
because we already have data suggesting that evolution is true. So when we find these things, it makes sense if evolution is true.
We actually
pulling from data that we already have. That's how it works.
Right, but you can talk about data, but this claim right here is not supported by any sort of empirical observation.
There are two sources there that are linked to that idea. So if you click on 1 and 2, right there after that sentence, it'll lead you to
bacterial. Yeah, it's a bunch
ancestry of plastids and mitochondria, which is a whole paper.
Scientific American, 1957. These are people making up stories they don't know anything about things that happened billions of years ago.
No, they're pulling data they have to.
They're pulling from data. See, as soon as you're confronted with data, you just assume that there's some grand conspiracy.
This is the problem.
Continue the propagation of the evolution idea. It's not that all of the data points to it. It could possibly be that. It just has to be that the scientists all really, really want us to think evolution is true, even though it isn't, for no good reason.
Yeah, what these people are doing is they are injecting their evolutionary presuppositions and faith-based beliefs into a scientific paper.
No, data-based beliefs, because we quote each other all the time.
Okay, well, I just proved that basically this is what is an observed fact. The proteins required for the generation of mitochondria are based, or at least mostly based or partly based in the nuclear DNA.
The DNA, yeah. So after billions of years of coevolution, we've made it to where the energy source gets produced by the brain of the cell.
But you can't
some level of sense.
You can't show me those billions of years. You can only appeal to them.
Well, I can. I can show you the billions of years with geology, or I could if I had.
But you can't. You can't.
Leave at 9:30. So if you have a final point other than this paper is wrong when it disagrees with me and correct when it agrees with me, I'd love to hear it. If you have a closing idea, but I need to get moving.
I guess my final point is that we can make up stories about things that happened billions ago, but what we observe now is that mitochondria require nuclear DNA. So that is kind of where I went to get, and we got that.
Okay.
So
so in the scientific paper you are using as evidence for that, it straight up says that mitochondria are an engulfed protobacterium, which is supported by evidence. And evolution continues to be supported by evidence. It is still the one and only explanation of biodiversity with any demonstrable evidence.
Okay, and I will give you a final.
The best part of this idea is that even if you could somehow defeat science's best theory, you still wouldn't have done step 1 to proving your God is real.
Yeah, at that point, you would still need to demonstrate.
We just wouldn't know what biodiversity was.
That's the thing.
I need to get moving. So, Jonny, I'm leaving the rest of this to you.
But before you go,
but
I also want to say I really do want to thank you all for coming. I think it was an interesting conversation. I did learn some things, and you challenged me.
I'm glad. I hope you learn how to read research papers beyond the abstract. Because it's very, very important.
Right. All right. You can feel free to leave whenever is convenient for you.
I've got to head out. Y'all have a good day. Thanks for having me. If you want to learn more about evolution, I'm more than happy to set up another meeting. Have a good
Appreciate it. And maybe we will. Thank you.
Yep.
Am I allowed to speak to the audience?
Yeah, go ahead, Jonny. Hold on one second. Let's unshare that. So go ahead, Jonny.
Earth. So you're saying that we have to demonstrate that a universe without God is possible. Well,
no, I never said that. I never said that.
No, I'm talking about the person in the chat.
Okay. Let's look at the chat. This is Earth. Glad to see you. By the way, anyone who's watching, like and subscribe if you haven't already. But okay, Earth. When he says you have to prove God first, he is assuming that a universe without God is possible, a claim or assumption he must show to be true. All right, that's an interesting argument. What do you have to say to that, Johnny?
All the data we have currently never suggests that the universe was actually ever created. Let's do some logical premises here. Logical premise 1: something cannot come from nothing. I believe we all agree on this.
Correct.
Yes.
Logical premise 2: we have something. So
Correct.
the conclusion is that something has always existed, and I think it's the universe, because the second law of thermodynamics states that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So I don't actually have a reason to ever think that it was created. I think it has always existed to some capacity. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of different theories that people have as to what they think could have been before, but the problem is that we can only we can only observe back to a certain time, and we can't go past that. So we can never say with certainty what was before the cosmic expansion. But there's a lot of good theories that make good explanations for it, and so I don't think there's an actual reason to assert that the universe was ever created. So I think that it's very possible that the universe can exist without a god. I feel like the main thing would be to demonstrate that a god has to exist.
Well, define
Yeah.
God. How would you define?
Jonathan, I've actually made this point several times on this channel, and I don't know, just real quick to focus on that. I'm a big fan of Penrose and the Big Bounce.
Yeah.
But obviously that's just one version of it. I mean, there could be multiple, but I agree with you 100%. I think evidence backs that up. I think that's the most logical conclusion, is that the universe has always existed, and I don't think there's any logical reason to assume that it hasn't.
Yeah. Now, obviously, what we have now is new. It's new
Yes.
in compare. Now, obviously, like the way we think of time, I believe it's the estimate is 19.77 billion years. Is the estimate. Now, obviously, that's a long time for us, but in compared to how long the universe could be here after us, based on like current estimations, how long it could be here after us, 19.77 billion years is nothing. So, in comparative to that, the universe is actually quite young to what could like in, compared to what it could be. You know what I mean? So, I just
What is your definition of God? Like, so you're talking about what is your concept of, if there was a God that existed, what would its nature or essence be? If you could define that, John.
So personally, I don't think there is one. So I have to go off of what other people define theirs as. But typically, what I hear is the triomni God, which is that it's all good, all powerful, and all knowing. But obviously, some people have a different definition. So what is your definition? Because I don't actually have one. So I would need your definition to actually.
Yeah. So my definition of God would be the fundamental essence of the basis of existence, or the source of existence, and also that God would have to be something that's intelligent and aware and acts with intentionality. So those are the kind of my two main principles for what I think God is that basically God is the foundation or source of all existence, and that also God has some sort of intelligence, awareness, or consciousness associated with.
So are you a
him.
deist then, or?
Well, I think I'm not necessarily a deist. I think I would consider myself a theist, and I also am a Christian. So I think that, but I think that a lot of things in the Bible are allegorized or anthropomorphized.
I just think a lot of them are just straight up not true. But that's.
Oh yeah, of course. But I think that when the Bible does discuss God in human terms, it's more so we can relate to something as complex and incomprehensible as God. But I think ultimately that God is aware of God's creation and is concerned with it and has a purpose for humanity. So they're the thing I believe about God.
Also, I have to point out Zen Master. Thank you. It was 13 billion years, not 19. Where the hell did I get 19?
I was wondering about that myself. I was like, is there a study out there that I haven't heard of?
Yeah, I was also a little 13. Okay, so 13,
but that makes that's even more so. Like the universe only being 13 billion years old compared to what it could be. That's pretty young. I mean, what it could be.
Well,
now the Big Bang. No. The Big Bang Theory. This guy in the chat, he's a little bit, and people get confused about this a lot. The Big Bang Theory is what we would call the beginning of time and space, so to speak. But this is not the beginning of everything. So prior to the Big Bang, we have a lot of really solid theories, quantum fields and things of this nature. Matter was actually in a different state of matter.
Yeah.
So all our modern physics are related to the Big Bang and subsequent events after the Big Bang. Anything prior to that is completely. It is all. It's what do you call it? I can't even come up with the word right now.
Theoretical.
Thank you. Yeah,
Hypothetical.
it's all theoretical and hypothetical, both, just depending on how deep the hypotheses go. Like I mentioned, the big bounce theory. This is actually a theory. You got string theory out there, so there are actually well developed theories to this. But the argument, though, that the brother was making here is to focus on that is that matter exists, and we know that something doesn't come from nothing, and to focus. So just the nuts and bolts of it. That's what you guys have to get around. Is this creation ex nihilo essentially concept? But I go ahead. I didn't mean to divert.
No, I think I want to stay on evolution. We're getting into cosmology right now, and that's an interesting discussion. I see a lot of problems with what y'all are saying. Again, it's kind of the same thing though with evolution, so it's almost the same topic. What y'all are doing. And I'm not trying to be derogatory here or demeaning in any way, but this is what I'm seeing happen: is that you're assuming. It looks to me, maybe assuming isn't even the best word, but you're taking these scientific theories, which are not based on direct observations.
They're based on data, though.
Okay, data, whatever. But in my opinion, that there is really no solid foundation for believing that these things happened.
I disagree.
Like you, okay, you can.
Yeah,
you can
it's like I was talking about before, is rewinding the clock. So tie something like the Big Bang into this. The reason we think the Big Bang actually happened, even though we don't think that's the beginning of everything, so to speak, is because we're rewinding the clock. We have very good evidence of what we're looking at right now, and we can reverse that and look at where that, what was it a minute ago, what was it an hour ago, what were things like 2 days ago, and just continue to wind the clock back. And what we get to is this infinite compression, right? Mm-hmm. And so the same thing with evolution is we have all this data, and we look at all the data that we've had going back as far as we can observe it, right? So the fossil records of this nature, and all these things come into play. All this data factors into this, and all of the data is pointing in a very clear direction.
Actually, no, it's not. I'll get into some of the data, but I think something that I noticed with Yenek, and I appreciate Yenek coming on the channel, but what I found was he's another. A lot of this is a mistake. They think. He uses the term, we know what happened. We know that, let's go back to the mitochondria conversation. He was talking about, I tried to press him. I want to know what is something that I can observe happening that proves that mitochondria were once a separate organism that eventually became a symbiote and then actually a fundamental part of our cells. Which, by the way, before our cells had mitochondria, how did they produce energy? Which is a good question. But he basically made up this story about how this happened. And I said, well, if we observe things right now, mitochondria, they can't exist outside of the host cell. And he said, well, yeah, they can, but in the proof of this is other bacteria. And I said, well, we don't know the other bacteria are mitochondria or once were mitochondria. All we know is that they're bacteria. Like he said, E. coli is a type of mitochondria. He said that. So again, what I'm trying to say is, I think that there is a blindness here to the presuppositions of what must have happened for the theory to be true is what did happen, but the science doesn't just demonstrate that. So let me finish. I'm looking at what can I observe right now that demonstrates that mitochondria were a pre-existing separate organism.
Well, let
me finish. What I'm observing right now, there is no mitochondrial organism living separately from cells. E. coli is not a mitochondria; it's an E. coli. And the DNA in our nuclei codes for proteins that make up mitochondria, which he originally said was not the case. So he was wrong about that. So the science is on my side. Do you understand that? Is that kind of clear?
I would disagree because he was showing you studies where they present their evidence and you kind of glossed over it, I think.
Well, okay, let's go back to the study. I want to show you why there's no evidence to again, this is what scientific studies do. All right, so here it is. Nuclear mitochondrial interactions. This is from 2022, which is pretty recent. Brittany Walker and Carlos Moraes. The abstract. So the original question is, the question we were trying... What's that?
What's the study called? So I can look at it too.
It's called Nuclear Mitochondrial Interaction. I'll post the link in the private chat. Okay. So there it is, right there. I posted in the private chat. Okay. One of the questions I had was, because it was shocking when he said that mitochondria have all, are just capable of existing independently of the cell. But I was like, well, for that to happen, there can't be coding in the nucleus for the mitochondria. So that was a question I had. But so I read this right here. I just proved it wrong in real time. Despite having its own circular genome, the mitochondria, the majority of mitochondrial proteins are encoded by nuclear DNA. All right, that's just mitochondria. If their proteins are coded for by DNA, they have to live in the cell of that nuclear DNA. They cannot. Okay.
Now, yes.
Okay, but we went down and we get to the body of the paper. That was the abstract. We're going to the body. It starts off with a blanket, baseless, unjustified claim that all of these scientific papers do, and it's in my opinion, it borders on dishonesty. Look at what it says. Mitochondria, a double membrane organelle evolving from an engulfed protobacterium, is colloquially referred to as a powerhouse of cell. This is a totally baseless, unjustified claim that has no justification within the paper itself. Okay,
yeah, but they provide a source though.
You go to one, and it's a paper. It's a book from 1983.
Yeah,
and what is the evidence going to be? This isn't something that. All right, so let's try to see if we can find this.
I don't know exactly because I don't know anything about this specific topic. Yenek, like I said, Yenek knows things that I have no idea about. So I was like, wow, I got to know that. That's something. So, but like,
I found him to be extremely intelligent, well versed in this specific topic, and I really appreciate him
coming. Things that I've never even thought about, but like it tells you, it gives you like all the sources and stuff like that. So that's where you would need to look for like to see what kind of evidence those sources show you, because this is where they get the information from. That's how science works. I
understand.
Draw from each other to.
But I get what you're
further their
I get what you're saying, though. At the end of the day, Ace, I do understand, and I think we all do understand what you're ultimately saying. Is that eventually you got to wind the clock back to a point to where nothing has been observed, and I understand, the premise of what you're ultimately getting at is that this goes back. If it goes back billions of years, clearly no scientist ever actually observed these things happening. So I get that.
The problem is when you go to the story being told by Yenek about there is no evidence anywhere of that being true. And I asked him, what is the evidence? He said they have their own DNA and they can exist independently of the cell. I just proved that wrong. If the proteins for mitochondria are encoded by the DNA, then there is nothing outside of what to prove that anything has ever other than that case. And I said, what is the evidence of mitochondria living outside of the cells in which they exist now? He says, well, there are bacteria. So in his mind, the fact that bacteria exist proves his case. But for someone like me, it's like, no. And he said an E. coli is an example of mitochondria. He actually, I want to get you to how absurd the things. Again, I don't want to impugn Yenek's character, but I am going after his arguments. Yenek actually affirmed, I asked him like several times just to be extremely clear. He affirmed that humans are prokaryotes. Well, even though I proved to him that by definition, a prokaryote does not have a nucleus. So he has been completely blinded by his adherence to evolutionary dogma.
I disagree. My reason being is that because prokaryotes became eukaryotes, but they still maintain the basis of being prokaryotes. So if he's going off of like,
wait a minute, there's Jonny, I'm not sure. We'll finish this. I don't want to interrupt you, so please finish your statement, and then I will respond.
So he's going off of the basis that although prokaryotes eventually changed, they were still prokaryotes. Eukaryotes are basically like a subset now. Is kind of what he's going off of, which is a decent way to look at it. That's a way you can look at it, and it makes sense. So by still looking at it, we're eukaryotes, but what are eukaryotes? They're a subset of prokaryotes. Is how I understand it.
No, that's Johnny.
That's how I understand it.
You can
I have a point I'd like to make too. After you're done with yours, Ace, let me just jump in. No, you finish yours, and then let me ask something.
I'm done with my point.
Right. What you're doing, Johnny, and what actually Yenek was doing is begging the question. We're asking. We're trying to demonstrate evolution.
Sure.
And one argument he made is that nothing ever evolves beyond what it originally was. So I pointed to you basically humans, or eukaryotes, and prokaryotes. And he said, well, yeah, it's just that, well, eukaryotes are prokaryotes. So you basically baked your belief into an assumption of what must have happened based on the belief itself.
But it's
circular. It's circular reasoning. We have prokaryotes, which again science defines as organisms without a cell nucleus, and we have eukaryotes, which are multicellular organisms with a nucleus. To just say that eukaryotes are a evolutionary ancestor of prokaryotes is to beg the question of what we're trying to prove, and it's baked into the assumption that evolution happened when you have to demonstrate that that's what actually happened. You see what I'm saying?
I understand definitely. It's just that he's going off of data. He's not just going off of a belief. He's going off of data.
Okay,
everybody believes in something, but
I would. He didn't. You have to understand. He presented no data for how we know that, except to basically manipulate language and claim that it happened. That's the whole what I wanted him to do. Where is the data? Where's the observation, the scientific experiment showing that a prokaryote evolved into a eukaryote or can do that? What he did was told a story, and what evolutionary scientists in general is tell stories, and then by definition change definitions to where eukaryotes just are prokaryotes. And we know that because evolution happens. So we can assume that eukaryotes. Let me ask you, Johnny. What is the data? What is the observation that shows that prokaryotes evolved into eukaryotes?
Hold on a second. I can find it for you.
Okay, let's see it. Yeah, right. We still don't know because, right, if Yenek had done his job, we would know what the data is, but he didn't. He made a claim and he made assertions without providing any data whatsoever. He told a story. And this is what they do. Go ahead.
The first thing I want to go back to the mitochondria topic for a second, because I actually found a study that explains how this happens. They actually explain how this happened. Right. So it's not just telling you that it happened, they explain how.
All right, go post it in the private chat.
I can't post it in the chat, but I can tell you what it's called. I can't post it in the chat because I'm looking it up on my laptop.
Tell me how you found it, and tell me how you found it.
It's called How Mitochondria Evolved from. Wait, let me go back to this. I can actually.
What's it? Evolved
from bacteria, and it's by Nature India. I think that's a site you were on a minute ago, wasn't
it? Is it this Nature article?
Yeah.
All right, so
it tells you molecular biologists have discovered how. Well, I'm not going to read that.
Is this? I'll just get to the juicy stuff. Is it this January 2022 article?
Let me check. Yes, 27th.
January 20th. Okay, so let's read here. It tells you.
Amino acids come in two different forms. L and D. L-amino acids are predominantly used to make proteins in cells, from bacteria to mammals. Cells use D-aminoacyl tRNA deacylase, DTD, a proofreading enzyme that only allows L-amino acids to prevent D-amino acids being incorporated into proteins. The research team, led by Rajan, name I can't pronounce, at the Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology in Hyderabad, found that the bacterial DTD had undergone a change that was compatible for use in eukaryotic cells. They also found a change in discriminator element for mitochondrial transfer, RNA tRNA, that shuttles glycine, an essential amino acid for making a protein. Of the 1,000 proteins identified in mitochondria, 40% are of bacterial origin. To trace back mitochondria's origin, the scientists did experiments with Jacobita, the earliest known tiny free-living organisms that retain a bacterial-like mitochondrial genome. The team detected the intermediate state of the tRNA discriminator code transition in the mitochondrial genome of Jacobita. They believe this probably happened during the bacteria to mitochondrial transition. So this article tells you their findings and why they suspect that.
Yeah. There you go. Why they suspect. All right, let's read this with my lens and show why it proves nothing, and it's just more.
Well, nobody said it proves anything. See,
okay.
There's no such thing as proving
what is
evidence.
that? Do you see what word I've highlighted right there on the screen?
Yeah, believe, because you know what a belief is, right?
Right. So believe is like someone believes that Jesus is the Son of God. So they believe that they can believe all they want. They haven't proven anything.
But their belief is based on the data they present.
Yeah. But the data doesn't prove what they. And even the last sentence, the researchers say their findings will help to increase understanding of the complex evolutionary. So
exactly,
again,
so that's they're telling
but
you
they
how
haven't. But
happened based on the evidence.
No,
how they think it happened.
There's what. Let me help you here. They're saying that this is probably something that might have happened during the evolutionary history, but they didn't demonstrate that mitochondria were originally something else and then got incorporated. No, they were saying
evidence for it.
They provided a small snippet of something that probably might have happened. They don't know. They believe it. Like they believe this probably happened. They don't know that
based
it happened.
on evidence, yes.
Yeah, okay, they can say it's the evidence all they want, but again, so this isn't science. This is when you start using words like they believe and they start talking about
belief comes from being convinced. Being convinced comes from evidence. So they're showing you what the evidence is.
For me, they've basically proved nothing. They haven't demonstrated.
Why would you strongly disagree with that? Because it feels like they demonstrated that they think that this is evidence for that, and the evidence is causing them to think that this is what happened. Like this is a belief based on data. It's not just based on this is what we think. It's based on actual data, which is why they think that. It's not like they just said, I think this is what happened just because I think that's what happened. No, they actually provide evidence for it, and they tell you how they did it. Like they tell you what they did to come to this belief that they have. Like they actually tell you this is how they came to it.
Can I just jump in here real quick before I forget my point?
Go ahead.
Okay, just a couple of things here. First of all, the one thing, and I'm not making any accusations. I'm just asking, seems like what I'm observing. So you guys tell me if I'm wrong here. It seems like microevolution is something that we all agree on. Yes. And macroevolution seems to be the dividing point. But let me just put this out there. If nobody observed, if we didn't have any before scientific method and before we, learned anything about James Darwin's theory of evolution, before any of that stuff happened, right? Nobody had any idea about microevolution. Something we all agree on is true, right? Nobody realized this was happening. Nobody understood that this was happening. And
even the Bible mentions microevolution. Like there's no doubt.
But there was a point. There was a point before the Bible was even written. Do we agree on that?
Yes.
Okay, so at some point, go ahead. So you think?
I think I think it was. Yeah, there might have been a time like where. Okay, let's just make your argument. What is it?
Well, the point of it. I mean, if you're going to say that somehow this has always been known, that's a whole nother conversation. But I think we could agree that this has not been something that's always been known. This is something that was discovered. This microevolution. It's something that we all accept as essentially fact, quote unquote. And I don't use those words very lightly. You know me. I don't think we should talk in those kind of terms, use that kind of language. But let's call it a fact that microevolution works. It's something we all accept. Yeah. The thing we don't all accept as a group here is macroevolution. But the problem is that just because there was a point in time we did not had not yet discovered microevolution, right, doesn't mean that it wasn't true. Just because nobody had actually observed it, even before humans were on the earth, doesn't mean that it was actually untrue. Okay, because animals were evolving before humans ever got onto the planet, right? So just because we're not going back and observing macroevolution, because that's an actual impossible task, doesn't mean have anything to do, have any bearing whatsoever on whether it's true or not. It just means we're not actually observing certain steps in the process, abiogenesis specifically, right?
Yeah.
Is that a fair?
Yeah, that's true. And I would say, I would also say it goes beyond abiogenesis. I would say it also extends to the grander macroevolutionary claims of evolution. But okay, go ahead.
So I just want to put that out there, that we haven't actually refuted anything by simply saying we don't observe this or do or don't observe something. The other thing
But again,
to say,
okay, go ahead.
okay, and the other thing I'd like to point out, and this is something the gentlemen both touched on, and it's something that I've really tried very carefully to avoid, and I feel like they were both extremely respectful about the way they said it. So I just want to put that out there. I appreciate you, Jonny and Yenek, if he watches this. I think they were very respectful, but they were also being very honest in that what we're talking about, all these things we're talking about, even our beliefs or our assumptions or whatever you want to say, do have specific data points, and there's a lot of data points, like lots and lots of data points that we feel are pointing in a certain direction. When it comes to the claim, okay, so if you're going to just hand wave all that away, ultimately you're either agnostic about the situation or you actually have a claim of your own. And if the theist has a claim of their own, they're ultimately going to hijack into the situation. Where are the data points that actually back this up? That is something I've really, like I said, I'm not coming onto your channel to debunk Christianity. That's not my goal. I think we have some really interesting topics to talk about, Paul versus Jesus and stuff. I love that kind of stuff, but I'm not here to deconvert people. I think that, that's a very, very slippery slope. And I feel it would be very disrespectful of me to try to convince somebody that something that for all intensive purposes, seem to need to believe, that to talk them out of that, because it provides something for their life, something significant. My issues come to when we use our beliefs to promote harmful behavior. So as an example, right now on that Discord channel that I was having that discussion with those Christians I was telling you about, there's this asshole named Mike from the Reconstruction Zone and a bunch of Christians who are literally saying that there's nothing wrong with slavery because he owns his children. And when I got pissed off and started calling him an asshole for that, he thought it would be a good look to start using gay slurs to call me, my arguments are so gay and I'm so whatever. And I'm just like, oh my God, dude, you're just making yourself look worse and worse and worse trying to defend your Bible by defending slavery. I mean, this is so toxic, and this is the kind of stuff it leads to that I do have a problem with. And I'm not saying you would do any of this stuff. I'm sure that you and I can agree that owning another human being is highly immoral. I would hope we could agree on that. And I think you would agree.
And Mike from Reconstruction Zone also just lies. He lies through his teeth. He intentionally twists the Bible to fit his narrative. So I think other Christians would also be very not happy about that. The fact that he's basically just using it to fit his narrative, changing words and things like that to try to make it fit what he wants it to. And I don't think that's it.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right about that. And the problem is, the problem is that Mike is not the only Christian doing this. And it's not just Christians that are doing this. People, and it's not just religious people. People with what I call extreme political beliefs do the same thing. But when it comes to our topic at hand, which is a religion, is at the end of the day, without, going too far off topic here, is that if you're going to hand wave away the data points and the conclusions that are made with the data points, you're hand waving away the data, you're hand waving away the conclusion. What are you actually replacing that with? And how are we actually going to get into that as a topic of whether the Bible has any veracity? So, for example, I can thoroughly debunk the whole notion that Noah's Ark was a thing because of my expertise in boat manufacturing. I can thoroughly debunk that whole thing. And for people to make silly claims like a boat with a six length by one beam ratio that's made out of wood would float, therefore the ark is true, is ridiculous. That's completely asinine. One does not equate the other one. That boat was not seaworthy, and I can prove that for a fact. But you're a person, when I brought that up to you, that said, well, I don't think the ark, if you disprove the ark, disproves the global flood myth. And I'm just coming at it from, where do we get the information from the global flood myth? Well, if we debunk the ark, then then it's just a flood. Well, then how did people, live through the flood without an ark? Like what have you really replaced that with? You haven't actually functionally, and we haven't had that full discussion, but you see what I'm saying? So you got to replace these things with something else. Otherwise, you're just digging your head in the sand and saying, "Nuh-uh." You know what I mean?
Well, first of all, you said a lot there, and I want to respond to basically all of it. I go on other people's channels all the time and try to disprove their fundamental, deeply held personal beliefs. So I can't sit here and require that other people don't. Basically, in my opinion, I think the right thing to do in all situations is try to establish truth. And if someone's in error, whether it's me or someone else, then the right thing to do is try to show that person he or she is wrong. So you're doing nothing wrong, objective, by coming on my channel and trying to prove me wrong if you can do that, and if it's actually ultimately true that I am wrong. So don't worry about offending me. If y'all had come on here and actually proved evolution to me, I would be morally obligated to, even if it hurt my feelings, to change my mind. And if I don't change my mind, that's my problem. That's me being a bad person for being emotional and not accepting what's true. Now, I don't think anyone did that. Excuse me. I don't think that happened, so I have not changed my mind. But up till now. But again, I just want to say, don't feel bad about making arguments that try to, because I do it all the time myself. I go on other people's channels. I do a lot more on other people's channels than I do on my own. And I'm almost always arguing with people about why they're wrong about what it is their channel is about. So, but I don't think I'm not trying to hurt people's feelings. I'm trying to establish what's true, and I assume that you're trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, I agree.
As for your claim that I have to replace the skeptical claim with something, no, actually, I don't. I can throw the Bible out the window and say that basically my belief in a flood or creationism has nothing to do with any sacred text. It's based on observations of reality. And I think that, or even let's just take evolution. Since we're talking about evolution tonight, let's just stick with evolution. The mechanisms of evolution are that genetic mutations over time are inherited and passed along, and over time it leads to diversification of life. Let's just say it was theoretically possible to demonstrate that that's not true. But also that would just leave us in a situation where we don't know what happened. Okay, here's the thing. You don't have to replace a scientific theory with something else. You can just prove a scientific theory wrong. Asteria, I don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry. We're still going at evolution. You can go back and rewind the stream.
Yeah, I think he was asking anyone in the chat if they knew what was happening, and nobody answered.
Yeah.
Anybody who wants to join the conversation at this point should be welcome to come in. I don't think it's going to throw a wrench in anything.
Yeah, can we get Asteria up here?
No, hold on, because I want to focus on YouTube for a little bit more. I would like to. I will open it up. I know that Jonny, you already said your time is limited, but I believe you already said that your time is somewhat limited, so maybe you don't have a lot more time.
Just a little bit.
Okay, well, I do want to do, actually, even though I don't have to prove evolution wrong, I don't actually logically have to replace it with something else. I do think I can do that.
Okay.
What is y'all's understanding of the theory of intelligent design, and who are the major proponents of it that you've read and kind of analyze their arguments? Can you all name some people whose books you read, or maybe just their websites or anything about from the intelligent design movement, the major voices in that movement?
So my exposure to intelligent design has come primarily from two sources. One is from a theological position, which is based entirely off of presuppositions. And the other one is what I've been spending more time dealing with, which is more the philosophical arguments, which you and I have discussed a little bit. Some of this, the ontological argument, the Kalam, the modalists, these different types of arguments for ontology, Ansel, and Epicurus, and Ephination, all these different philosophers that have basically throughout history that have tried to argue God into existence is frankly what they're doing. But that's my only actual exposure to this.
Okay, so basically almost nothing at all based on and I'm talking about the modern intelligent design movement as it's currently manifested in people like the Discovery Institute and various others. What about you, Jonny? Have you read any books by intelligent design proponents or listened to them specifically outside of watching skeptics post videos about what they're saying, or what is your exposure to the intelligent design movement?
I'm familiar with their argument for intelligent design, but I have not read any of their books. Most of it comes from articles they've written. I can't name any of the articles because I don't have them written down, but I have looked at them.
Okay, so I want to say this. If all you're doing is going to skeptics' portrayal of what the intelligent design proponents are saying, there's a chance.
people who people who actually advocate for it, and I've looked at their articles.
So who exactly?
I don't know any other names. So
okay, you don't remember their names.
So I only have
yeah.
a
So
basic understanding.
yeah. So it sounds to me like your understanding is extremely weak about what intelligent design and proponents are actually saying.
Yeah, it is pretty much.
Okay, so again, that's doesn't make you a bad person. I think I can help you because I think it's better if you understand the other side as well and what exactly is being said. There are some there's some very crucial books that are part of the movement. I think Michael Behe's book, I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called The Black Box. What is it? Let me buy Michael Behe's book. These are books I think you all should read just to get The Black Box, Michael Behe. Or what is it called? Darwin's Black Box. There's Stephen Meyer's books, Signature in the Cell and Darwin's Doubt, which are absolute classics. Do you all understand the argument about generating information in the cell? Could you all articulate that to me? This is probably the most common argument made by intelligent design proponents. So I wondered if either one of you can properly articulate the information problem about generating information in cells. Do you understand what the problem is and why intelligent design proponents think it's a problem?
Did you, just real quick, did you reference the Think Institute?
No, I did not. The Discovery Institute.
Okay.
The Think Institute, I'm going to highly recommend people don't watch because it's garbage.
Yeah, I was going to say, because those guys are running tag right now, and it's such a ridiculous precept. Okay, I just want to make sure.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, the Discovery Institute is what I said. But can either one of you articulate the information problem for evolution?
No, go ahead and steel man it for us real quick.
Jonny, can you articulate the information problem?
No, I cannot. So could you?
Wow. So you don't. I'm not trying to humiliate anyone, but neither one of you knows the absolute most basic argument that the intelligent design.
The argument that of new information in the genes is that.
Yes.
Well, the way I understand is that it doesn't actually create when it creates when they say it creates new information. They're basically just saying that it recombines DNA to do that. So, and we see that with genetic disorders. A lot of genetic disorders are caused by adding new information, which is just it's old it's the same information, but it's copied differently. So there's more of it than there needs to be. That's what they say when there's added information to it.
Not even close. Not even close. That is not even close.
Steel man it for me then.
I'm asking you if you know what the problem of generating genetic information is and why it's seen as a problem. Can you articulate that for me?
No, I can't. Could you please steel man it for me?
All right. Well, okay. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to do a lot of laying the groundwork, and I'm going to have to rely on you to do your own research and follow up on. Okay. So what is genetic information? All right, so information has a mathematical precise definition, and we find we find the same kind of information in genomes as we do in kind of computer codes. Information in the genome is basically sections of the genome that code for proteins. The reason is because proteins are made up of basically building blocks. Individual building blocks, and when the cell is again, I'm just gonna have to lay all this out. I'm gonna have to present.
That's fine.
Yeah, some basic biology.
Sure.
Proteins are essential for all life. Most of our physical body is made up of proteins. They do all kinds of important things in the body. As far as we know, no organism can live without proteins. Even the simplest organism have hundreds of proteins. Proteins, when you look at them at the molecular level, are basically made up of chains of what are called amino acids that fold in specific patterns. Okay, the amino acids can be thought of as bricks or building blocks, and there's basically 20 of them that are used in life. The amino acids, which are the blocks that form the chains of proteins, are coded for by DNA. So DNA's major function is to code for protein synthesis. They do this by coding for the amino acids, which are used to build proteins, which are essential for life. So for life to exist, DNA has to exist again, this is based on what we know about current life, which is basically, there's no reason to think it was ever any other way. Basically, the DNA is necessary to code for the proteins. All right. Proteins are extremely complex molecules. Like they're made up of thousands of molecules and atoms and things like. They're huge. Each individual protein is made up of many times thousands of amino acids, and acids themselves are complex molecules. So proteins don't form naturally, and DNA doesn't form naturally. As far as we know, we have to synthesize them in labs. They just don't float around in the water out there. They have to be created in labs by intelligent scientists. But anyways, the DNA to create a functional protein has to be arranged in a certain sequence. So the sequence of DNA, as that synthesizer is moving along the DNA, it's reading it and it's putting the amino acids in a line. If you can imagine kind of an assembly line, it's reading the DNA and it's coming to what's called a codon sequence. And the codon sequence is what codes for the amino acid. So the synthesizer moves along the DNA, it reads it, and it synthesizes the amino acid. And amino acids form into a chain and fold into a protein. So this is what DNA does. This is what it is. It's the code that codes for amino acids. Uh-huh. So the code, that's why it's called a code, because it's literally a code. It codes for the basic building blocks of all life. So the information in the DNA is the code that codes for proteins. So you cannot get life without a genetic code, as far as we know. So the question is, unfortunately, protein sequences are extremely specific, like a word. You can't just throw any group of letters out there and get a word or a book or a masterpiece, novel. You have to type very precisely because words have meaning. Same way with amino acids. They only fold into proteins when they're in very specific sequences. If you just string together any length of amino acids, it kind of just forms this goo that does nothing. But proteins that are used in life are kind of very sequence-specific lines of amino acids. So the DNA has basically, according to the evolutionary scientists, mutated in such a way that these sequences have been found. So that's just the basic biology I had to explain to you. We haven't even gotten to the problem.
Okay, so what's the problem?
The problem is that the sequences of amino acids are so complex and so specific that the number of mutations required to find even one protein in the history of life exceeds all the individual known organisms that have ever lived. The sequences of DNA are so complex and so specific that there were not enough mutations in the history of life to even find one meaningful sequence of DNA that would code for a functional protein. And okay, so you're probably asking, well, what's the proof of that? Well, intelligent design programmers have written a number of books about this, but no one knows about them because the scientific community doesn't talk about them. So if you want, if you want to watch a quick, here, I'm going to post a link in the chat real fast.
Sure.
There is a quick 20-minute video that summarizes the problem that you can watch. You don't have to watch it right now, but I do recommend that you watch it at some point because it will give you a basic understanding of why evolution is essentially mathematically impossible. This is just one argument that I'm giving you. So I'm going to post this in the I'll post it in the actual common chat, the public chat out there, because I'm the host. I can post things in the chat. So there's the video. It's called The Information Enigma. Again, it's 20 minutes long. I don't recommend you have to watch it right now, but it should give you a basic understanding of why evolution, according to what we understand, is mathematically impossible. I'm going to give you all some other resources to look at, just so you have an idea of the actual arguments that are being made, and not the straw men that we hear people like Yenek bringing up. And that's not a shot at Yenek. He didn't present anything that, to me, represented anything meaningful or an argument against what's actually again, Objective was talking about how to replace evolutionary theory. I highly doubt Yenek is familiar with this information as well. So this is there's a web. Yeah, go ahead, John. I've been talking for a long time, so go ahead.
So Earth says, if evolutionists don't know how life came from non-life, how can they know it did? Well, we don't know. Well, even if you're a Christian, you agree that life came from non-life. We just disagree on the method of how that happened. So, was there ever a point in time where life did not exist?
I think that there are some assumptions that are here in Earth's comment. And by the way, thank you, Earth, for being here, engaging. I'm sorry I ignored you for so long. I was kind of just in my own little world there.
He was speaking, so I mean, it's not-
I think that implicitly here he's saying that if evolution of no life came from long life naturally, so obviously he's
well,
assuming.
we have evidence for it.
No, we don't. We don't have evidence of that.
We do.
We have evidence of abiogenesis.
Yes. So let me. I know a little bit more about this specific subject. So,
Okay, so I'd like to hear it. What is the
so
evidence?
it's a theory. So it's a theory because we've never actually observed it happening, but we can make theories based on the data that we have.
Okay, so what is the data?
With the available data we have, like the Miller-Urey experiment, which produced amino acids out of early Earth flight conditions, although they didn't replicate the conditions perfectly, but it still did create amino acids. And we also have the theoretical pairs that would be, like, we know the theoretical pairs that would be needed to create the first cells. So we have a basic understanding of how abiogenesis naturally would work, and it's the best explanation for life that doesn't appeal to a non-demonstrable being.
Oh dear, Jonny, your mind has been so poisoned by
No, it hasn't.
by claims.
It's 'cause I'm educated on the subject. That
Okay, so how many of the amino acids necessary for life were produced by the Miller-Urey experiment?
Not that many. I believe there was like
Yeah.
4 or 5. Might be
Yeah.
less.
So how many
Might be less.
amino acids are used in living organisms? Do you
Say it
know?
again. I didn't hear you.
How many amino acids are used in living organisms?
A lot.
You know?
I can't give you an exact number.
There is an exact number. Do you know what it is?
I don't know the exact number, but I know it's a lot.
It's not. It's not. Well, if the number is 20. Okay, so the number is 20.
I thought
Are
it
there
was more
20?
than-
No,
I thought
it's 20. So there are 20 amino acids that are coded for throughout all of living organisms. Yeah, you're right. The Miller-Urey experiment only produced 3 or 4 of them. So you don't even have. Let's just say it was 4. Let's say it was 5. Of the remember, all 20 of them are necessary. There's not a single organism that doesn't use all 20 of them. So for the Miller-Urey experiment to only produce a quarter of the necessary amino acids, and by the way, the amino acids still have to be formed into functional proteins.
Yeah.
That is not even close. That's like saying, "Oh, we want to find evidence that Taj Mahal arose naturally," and you walk around and you find a few like clods of dirt that are stacked on top of each other. So, well, if this mound of dirt can form naturally, the Taj Mahal can form. You're not even in the same ballpark as anything close to related to life with amino acids forming in the Miller-Urey experiment. You're not even close. All right.
Sure, but you do agree that it demonstrated that inorganic chemicals can form into more complex molecules. The molecules that would be needed to create life, even if it didn't create all of them, it still created some of them.
Yeah, but life has a definition. It isn't just basic molecules.
Sure.
It's actually a living thing that self-reproduces and is
Sure, and
So again, like the analogy, like if you want to prove that the Taj Mahal could arise on its own naturally, you wouldn't walk around in the woods and find a couple rocks stacked on top of each other. So, well, if this little stack of rocks can pile on top, maybe the Taj Mahal, yeah. So the living thing has a very precise structure.
Sure.
And it has a number of, basically, if you think about it as like a building or some sort of technology, it's specifically arranged parts and pieces made of different materials. So basically what you've got with the Miller-Urey experiment is like you've got a couple bricks lying around or things that look like bricks piled on top of each other, not in any type, and you're trying to get to the Empire State Building. And you say, so what I'm seeing you is I'm looking at the Empire State Building and someone's claiming, I think that could arise naturally just without any intelligent invention. And you know how I know that? It's because look at this pile of stones and bricks over here. Look, it just kind of formed naturally by wind and rain and erosion. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, yeah, it's not nothing, but you also have a very long way to go. So that's kind of what I'm seeing here.
Are you near I can't pronounce that name, but no, you're not a monkey, but you're an ape. We're all apes.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there in the chat. It doesn't seem to be anything. I
can't pronounce that name.
Rua Zuru Gaming.
That's a fun name. I like that.
Feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. Gaming.
Subscribe to Ace Philosophy.
And by the way, I know I'm being a little bit snarky with y'all, but I'm actually really appreciating the conversation, and I don't want you all to feel like I'm being hostile to you.
No, I don't think there's any hostility here at all.
Okay, so by the way, Johnny, you've been just like Objective said, you've been incredibly polite and respectful, and I think it's led to a meaningful conversation. I really do.
I was told you would be too. So.
All right, so let's try to maintain that. But I want to try to. If you'll give me more time, I just provided you in the private in the general chat the link to information thing about. I want you to watch that right now, because it's 20 minutes long.
I have to go, unfortunately, because it's 9:30 where I'm at, and I have to go within like a few minutes. But I wanted to go over like just one more thing on the Miller-Urey experiment, just a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
And then you can give me your closing, and then I'll have to go, and then you can bring some other people up to speak as well, because I'm sure there's a lot of. What was that guy, Eric? That was the Lionheart guy, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's Lionheart.
Okay, because I think he wanted to come up. I'm not sure if he's here anymore.
Here's what happens. Lionheart, if you don't let him up immediately, he goes and does his own thing. So I'm not worried about Lionheart right now. But go ahead with what you wanted to say.
So the Miller-Urey experiment was actually predicted in the 1920s. I can't pronounce the name, Opheim something, some guy, but they predicted that under early Earth conditions with certain gases in the atmosphere and with the primitive water bodies. I said it right the first time. I'm an idiot. But that with the primitive water bodies and the gases in the atmosphere and lightning, that this could trigger the production of amino acids. Miller-Urey experiment demonstrated that that is possible. Even if they didn't create all of them, they did actually demonstrate that is a thing, that is possible. So that contributed to the theory suggesting that yes, eventually you can get life from non-life naturally, but anyone's worldview life came from non-life. Like God, what you would call God, doesn't really count as a living being because he supposedly transcends that. So at some point there was no life. Now there's life. So at some point there was abiogenesis, and the only thing is we disagree on the method of how that happened. Some people think God created it, or I think that through a series of chemical processes, the first cells were formed.
Right, that's your faith. That's your faith.
I believe.
Well, no, it's not. It's not based on any type of empirical observation, and in fact, it conflicts
with the production of amino acids in an early Earth-like condition. It demonstrated that production of those amino acids, which would be needed for the production of the first cell, is possible. Even if
right. So, just like I said, having the basic building blocks of a cell, or a small number of them, not even the full suite of them, doesn't come anywhere close to getting you anything resembling we know as life. So again, on evolution, before you leave, just give me a few minutes because this is important.
Sure.
Because
I'll give you a few minutes.
Yeah. So a couple things on evolutionnews.org, which is the Discovery Institute's scientific website. There's a very good series of articles beginning in 2015, written by a gentleman named by the name of Keseluskin, and he calls it "Welcome to the Top 10 Scientific Problems with Biological and Chemical Evolution." So the first one is is dated January 2nd, 2015, and there's a 10-part series. You can see them all linked here. The first one, believe it or not, is actually no viable mechanism to generate a primordial soup. And basically, look right here. This is exactly what we're talking about. The first problem is in 1953, a graduate student at the University of Chicago named Stanley Miller, along with his faculty by Harold Urey, performed experiments hoping to produce the building blocks of life under natural conditions. And it runs through this article, the first in the series, runs through the many reasons to think this doesn't even come close to demonstrating that life is abiogenesis is possible. First of all, for instance, right here, the atmosphere used in the Miller-Urey experiments was primarily composed of reducing gases like methane and ammonia in high levels. Geochemists now believe the atmosphere of the early Earth did not contain appreciate. So the early model atmosphere they used was not realistic. It was
that's what I said earlier.
Right. So
right.
So he rigged it. He rigged it in an unrealistic way to favor getting.
No,
but
he was going off of the data they had available
right.
at the time.
Okay. Well, now we know he was wrong, and if you use an accurate model, his experiment doesn't work. Okay, so there's that. Yeah, it doesn't. The optimistic picture began to change. well, hold on. This atmospheric began to change in the 1970s when it became increasingly clear that the early atmosphere was probably volcanic in origin and composition, composed largely of carbon dioxide and nitrogen rather than a mixture of reducing gases assumed by the Miller-Urey model. Carbon dioxide does not support the rich array of synthetic pathways leading to monomers. Okay, so the atmosphere they used was basically junk and doesn't help in anything.
It did demonstrate that the production of amino acids with a chemical composition is possible. So it demonstrated that this is possible. Another thing I want to touch on is I believe they called the theory of panspermia, which is basically the idea that these amino acids came from space, and we have actually found them in space. We found like the 17 pairs of the 20 in space.
No, we haven't. No, we haven't. You're making claims. I'm sorry to interrupt you. We have not. Okay, go ahead. Where's your source?
Give me 2 minutes. I'll find it.
I know you're wrong because I've looked all this up. I've heard these claims before, and I'm proving you wrong in real time, and you're still throwing these false points at me. So go ahead.
Prove it wrong. You're putting holes in some places.
Yeah, you made a claim that they found the rest of the amino acids in other places in space. Okay, so let's see it. I'm curious because I've looked into this and I know it's false, but maybe there's new information I haven't seen yet.
Yeah. So this is actually from the NASA website right here. Oh, come on, computer, stop doing that.
Let's see what this is.
Let it load for a second. Yeah, so this is titled NASA.gov news release. NASA's asteroid Bennu sample reveals mix of life's ingredients. And they explain to you that they actually have found some of the amino acids that are required for life in this asteroid. And
Post it in the private chat. Post it in the private chat.
I can't because I.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry about that. Let me. What is it? So tell me how to find it.
It's called NASA's asteroid Bennu sample reveals mix of life's ingredients.
How do I spell Bennu sample reveals
mix of.
Okay, and reveals what?
Reveals a mix of life's ingredients.
Okay, let's take a look at this.
My computer's buggy.
Is it January 29, 2025?
I think so. Yes. I can't tell.
So is it on the NASA website?
Yeah.
Is this what you're reading right here?
I probably, but I can't tell because my computer's messing up.
All right.
Assumption that that's the one. Because now I don't know. My Google crashed. Damn it.
All right. I'm sorry. All right. So okay. So.
You were talking about how shitty mine is too.
Yeah. All right. So I'm just going to read it because basically I just want to cut to the chase. Studies of rock and dust from asteroid Bennu delivered by Earth's NASA OSIRIS have revealed molecules that on our planet are key to life, as well as a history of salt water that could have served as a broth for these compounds. The findings do not show evidence for life itself, but they do suggest the conditions necessary for the emergent life are widespread across the solar system. Asteroids. Okay, I'm looking for the actual data and not the claims.
Well, they'll tell you the sources at the bottom.
Detail in the National Astronomy paper, among the most compelling detections were amino acids 14 of the 20 that life on Earth used to make proteins, and all 5 nucleobases that life included how to arrange. Hold on. In research papers, scientists and the first in-depth analysis of the minerals and molecules on Bennu samples, which OSIRIS delivered to Earth in 2023. Detail in the Nature of Astronomy paper, among the most compelling detections were amino acids, 14 of the 20 that life on Earth used to make proteins, and all 5 nucleobases that life on Earth uses to store and transmit genetic instructions in more complex. All right, so that
what they found, and I believe at the bottom they'll show their late sources for it, or it might be at the top. I don't know. I don't know how does it. Because a lot of these websites will show it at the bottom, but some of them also show them at the top, and I don't know why. Yeah, so I mean, like this is evidence towards abiogenesis. It is not. It doesn't prove it because but this is evidence.
It's evidence that 14 of the 20 molecules using amino acids used in life. But I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty skeptical of this.
Oh, and that's okay. I encourage skepticism. Really, I really do. But it's evidence that they found these amino acids which are required for the production of life. I believe they also mentioned that they actually found some of on the asteroid they found chemicals that would also be required for it. Unless I misheard that part. So yeah, they show sources at the bottom.
Yeah. Okay.
I think was that a source or was that a detail? I can't tell.
Let's look at it. Oh no,
That's pretty cool, isn't it? That's pretty neat.
No,
it doesn't.
all right. Well, I will admit, I was not aware of this. If they did find 14 of the 20,
yeah.
Again, you're getting closer than the Miller-Urey experiment, but
that's how science works.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I think there might have been some contamination. I can't prove that, but
they account for contamination when they take the sample.
Yeah, they'll
I'm
say
telling
that.
you right now, Ace, if you try and go with the hydroplate theory on this, I'm just going to shit myself because I don't know if you're familiar with the hydroplate theory, but the asteroid belt is part of that nonsense.
Oh.
That all asteroids come from the Earth.
That'd be something.
Oh man, it would. So that while he's looking at that, yeah. So that part of the hydroplate theory, which the whole thing is completely ridiculous, but apparently when the depths opened up and all the water came rushing out because supposedly all this water was trapped in between the core and the Earth's crust, right?
Right.
And so for the flood thing, so all this water comes rushing out and it blows sedimentary material through the atmosphere outside into outer space, and that is how the asteroid belt was built. And so now that we're finding asteroids with organic material on them, the hydroplate theory is like, yeah, because it all came from the Earth, not realizing that I want to say Newton. It's the third law of motion, right? For every action, there's a reaction. So the amount of force that it would take to blast that much material off of the surface of the Earth would actually completely obliterate the Earth itself. You know what I'm saying? It's just completely nonsensical. But this ties into that. That's why. Sorry, not to diverge.
You know what? I'm going to say this. Scientists have never found on Earth the amino acids necessary for life outside of cells being produced. So the fact that they went to this asteroid and found 14 of them strikes me as extremely suspicious.
Not really.
And I am going to say I do not believe their conclusions. I do not believe that I do not believe they found these 14 amino acids on an asteroid. I just don't. I think that I don't know what the problem is. I don't know what the problem is, but the fact that we have all this life on Earth and they have looked for these amino acids in a naturally occurring condition, have never found them. And then all of a sudden they fly off to this asteroid in the middle of the solar system with no atmosphere, no protection from the elements. And they find these 14 amino acids and all the necessary nucleobases. That is extremely, extremely suspicious. I'm just going to say I don't believe it. I don't believe them.
I do.
Now they can. Okay, you can believe that. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just it's.
Well,
I don't know if they're lying or if
they show you the sources at the bottom.
I understand that they are the source. They're claiming that their mission went to this asteroid and found these amino acids. I'm sorry. I think it must have been contaminated or something else but I can't. But the fact here's my evidence. My evidence is that why would these amino acids form on this asteroid in the depths of space, but they can't form on Earth?
But you just said they couldn't form on Earth, so how are they contaminated?
Because they do exist on Earth, just they're not naturally forming on Earth. So they could have been contaminated from a living sample of some sort, or somebody might have touched the sample and that might have gotten read into the spectrometer or something. I don't know, but the fact
sounds to me, and I'm not trying to be rude or dismissive, but it sounds to me like an argument from incredulity, and it also sounds like an appeal to a conspiracy, even though you haven't used the word conspiracy.
Tell me this.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, you go ahead. No, I didn't mean to interrupt.
All I'm saying is that it strikes me as extremely unusual and suspicious that all of a sudden they fly off to this asteroid and find everything that necessary for life, but they can't find it on Earth. We have Dirty Varmint who's joined us. We're kind of opening it up a little bit now, I guess. But
hello.
Hey guys.
Dirty Varmint, did you have something are you talking about the hydroplate theory, Dirty Varmint? Is that what you wanted to talk about?
I guess. I mean, I just did a quick Google search and it said that like volcanoes can launch material from Earth into space.
How much material to create the asteroid belt?
Well, not necessarily. I just did a simple search. I didn't, put that.
The whole point of it is Newton's third law. You've got to, if you're going to launch that much material, you're going to absolutely, because the reaction that you're going to get from that, the amount of force that it takes, that's the point right there. You're talking about.
Yeah, I'm not saying the entire asteroid belt. No.
Yeah, that's the whole thing is it's safe. But and the other issue is, since you're here, the other issue that you guys never addressed, I don't want to digress into this again. The number one killer for the whole water coming up from the depths and the rainfall and all this stuff is the heat problem, which I didn't even have a chance to bring up to you guys. And the young Earth creationists, or what do they call the answers in Genesis? Those guys have put literally millions of dollars at this point into trying to prove creationism, and that is the number one thing they have absolutely no answer for the heat problem. So look up the heat problem. Look into that.
I'm not sure. Yeah, what you're
there's
talking about.
A massive heat problem with the global flood model, and they have not been able to solve it. They've even admitted that they cannot solve this problem. And so
What's the heat problem?
The amount of heat that's generated from all this friction and all these forces that are coming into play.
Or
literally melted the ark. The ark would have been incinerated. So even though I don't know if you were the one who was trying to say that thing was seaworthy or whatever, but literally the heat problem was a big problem. Just look into it.
Okay. Well, last time I was here, I mentioned that the U.S. Naval Observatory studied it and everything, but I was wrong. I was mistaken that for something having to do with Jesus's crucifixion day. But there is.
I give big props for that, but I will tell you this now.
Before you do that, I would like to finish my sentence.
Yeah, let's already varmint finish and then objective. You can go.
There is a study that was conducted in 1993 by Dr. Sion Hong. He's the director of the Miller-Urey World Class Ship Research Center based in South Korea. And he found that the proportions of Noah's Ark were perfectly balanced and meeting the demands of stability, comfort, and strength. And also the building materials were perfectly suitable.
I have absolutely no doubt about that. And the thing is, we never really got into the arc thing, but I never once said the arc wouldn't float. It's a 6-to-1 length to beam ratio, which is a common dimension for shipbuilding. Okay, the Persians invaded Greece. They did it because they took thousands of soldiers over on big ships. We know shipbuilding from thousands of years ago. Literally, at this point, we know that dimension is a solid dimension. You have two problems. First of all, the arc by the definition of the by the translation, of the actual word arc, and for what it actually refers to is a rectangular box, not a boat. There's no reason to assume that it actually had any kind of a hole, because there's no dimensions to define what kind of a hole it had. But let's just be gracious, because they're calling it a boat. Pretend that it did have a hole. That just because the thing would actually a 6-to-1 length to beam ratio made out of wood, right, would actually float. That's not the problem. The problem comes down to, is it seaworthy? And that's where the whole thing falls apart.
Well, that's where you have to look up Dr. Hong's study, because he found it to be totally seaworthy, and he said that it could withstand 100-foot waves.
Got it.
Which is a joke.
It's not. He's the director of a world-class ship research center, bro.
A modern battleship, its dynamic water conditions have never been seen before on the entire planet, first of all. And if you don't know anything about dynamic water conditions, which I assume you don't, is you've got these 100-foot waves coming at you from every single different direction at the same time. This is not a wave moving like with a tide or something like that, so you're getting crashed from every single direction. There's something called hodging, which you don't understand, bending and twisting. This thing would have snapped like an absolute toothpick.
Not according to Dr. Hong, and he is the director general of a world-class ship research center. So I'll take his word for it. He said it could.
I'm sure you will, because he knows exactly how much mass, right? How much density that ship was having to hold up, because he knows how many animals were on there and the fresh water and stuff. How did he come up with a solution for refrigeration to keep the penguins and the polar bears alive in the same environment that the lions and tigers were alive in? And how did he create those environments inside the ark?
So now you're just adding a bunch of extra things.
How many animals?
Keep moving the goalposts. Put the goalpost back where it was. Put the goalpost back.
All right, guys. All right. Okay. Another big problem is, what did the elephants eat? Because elephants need 300 pounds of vegetation a day.
All right, guys.
I
agree with Jonny.
It's not possible.
Hold on. How Noah fed the animals has nothing to do with whether the ark was seaworthy. All right, so you are moving the goalposts. I am agreeing.
Oh, it absolutely does. No, it absolutely ties into it, because you have to, in order for it to be seaworthy, it's got to actually float and be seaworthy in these kind of conditions, and you've got to store everything. All that cargo, the brother's talking about, the food, absolutely plays into this. all
Okay,
the
so that
water,
was-
all the
yeah,
fresh
yeah.
water that you're storing, it's going
Right.
to sink. That thing would sink so fast, even on flat water, once you load it up with all the things you would need to keep all these the animals and the stuff you need to keep. There's been one study that was done by a university to try and determine if this thing was actually viable. And they estimated something like, I can't remember how many, like hundreds of thousands of sheep, because they decided that the average animal was going to be determined by a sheep. And that's how they came up with so this is just
No,
completely
that's
hypothetical
ridiculous.
nonsense. It is ridiculous. The whole thing is ridiculous. You guys have no idea how many animals and what the average size of the average density of each animal, the amount of food for the animals, and the fresh water, storing the fresh water and keeping that fresh water. When you drive containers, shipping containers, or drive large commercial vehicles on the road that transport liquid. All right, so it's a fluid, it's a dynamic situation where the fluid is moving around. You've got to have things called water brakes involved, because as soon as that stuff starts sloshing from side to side, it'll tip over a tank or anything like that, because of it changes the stability factor, right? So all that motion that you're now doing on the sea, you're sloshing hundreds, probably millions of gallons of water around, fresh water, that you have to keep all these animals alive. You're sloshing around inside this boat. It's going to burst from the inside out. Plus the pressure of actually containing it.
No,
It takes
not.
it takes welded steel,
This is just all
welded
speculation. This has
I don't
nothing to
know
do
how
with
to do
science at
physics, bro.
all.
This is
If you want
physics.
the
To keep that
science,
water
you go to
contained.
Dr. Hong. Dr. Hong studies
Dr.
the world.
Hong. Yeah, where did he come up with the number of animals? Where did he just pulled that out of his ass?
May I
Dr.
say-
Hong.
He didn't study the number of animals. He studied
Exactly. How did he know it was seaworthy without knowing what the cargo was going to weigh?
May I say something?
Okay,
Okay,
well,
well, hold on, Johnny wants to speak. Johnny, go ahead.
I would just want. I mean, I feel like this topic is getting us off what the original topic was, which is the heat problem. We were talking about that, and then I feel like we kind of glossed over it.
Actually, I understand. I actually want to go back to evolution, because
Okay.
personally, the Noah's Ark is an interesting conversation.
It is.
I want to go. I kind of want to go have that another time. But
yeah,
I think all sides have spoken their piece. Dirty Varmint has said there's a reputable scientist who did a study, Dr. Hong, or science. And I was just okay. So Dirty Varmint has provided that. Go look at what he said. Sure. Listen to what Objective said, and I think we're just going to have to leave it there for right now.
Sure, I'll listen.
But if we want to continue this conversation another time in an open discussion, we can do that. How about that?
Yeah, that's
fair enough.
If I'm ever invited back, I'd be down. Yeah.
Let me get for sure. What did you do, Dr. Wang or Dr. Hong? I thought you said Dr. Wang.
Yeah,
Dr. Hong, I think he
spelled
said.
Seon as his first name, and then Hong is his last name.
What's his name?
Okay.
Seon Hong. He's a South Korean.
Is it Sean or?
What's that?
Is it Sean or Sion?
What's the name of his institution again, Dirty Varmint, so people can look this up?
It's the let's see, the KRISO.
KRISO. I'm sure that's probably an acronym for something.
Yeah, something to do with the Korean Research Institute for Seaworthy something.
Okay. So there you have it. Objective and Johnny, you can go and look at that and see if it holds up to your level of standards.
Who says that? What's his name? Dirty something? I can't.
Dirty Varmint.
Dirty Varmint. Thank you.
Yeah, he's
my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Dirty. I really do appreciate that. Okay, but again, getting back to problems with evolution. Okay, so abiogenesis.
I'm actually gonna have to go in just a second, but could you give me a conclusion, please?
Can I give you one more just thing to look at before you go? Like, I'll get it in 2 minutes.
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. If we go, if you look at another article written by Casey Luskin on July 25th, 24, he goes into this really serious problem with evolution has to do with evolutionary. They're called developmental gene regulatory networks. I actually have a video on my channel about them. Basically, I'll just summarize it very quickly because we don't have time to go into the actual details. Mm-hmm. Scientists have found that the gene regulatory networks can't be manipulated beyond a certain point. And that's why we observe strict limitations in evolution. Creatures just cannot evolve beyond what they actually are morphologically. You cannot get from a nematode to anything beyond a nematode. You can't get from a fish to a reptile. It's basically been proven by science you can't do this. But again, you can go look at the article and come back. I honestly do want to have more conversations with you, and you can come back and tell me what you think about that information.
Yeah. So I'll look into that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So Jonny, you've been an excellent guest, and you did a good job defending your viewpoint, and you actually did provide me more information to research, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
So how about you give a closing statement? Any thoughts you have? Anything you want to say? And then we can maybe continue our conversation another time. Go ahead, though.
So for my closing statement would be that I feel like evolution is demonstrable, and I feel like there are some holes. There's holes in every theory, but that doesn't lessen the okay. So let me put it this way, right? And Yenek was right. Evolution is one of the best supported scientific theories out there. So even though there's some holes in it, the fact that there are other scientific theories that are less supported, but that demonstrates that it's a good theory and it's backed up by a lot of evidence. And I think it really well explains the diversity of life on this planet. And I look forward to having more conversations about this in the future.
All right, Jonny. Thank you for being here, and I really do hope to
Of
have
course.
future conversations with you because you were, first of all, you were knowledgeable and you were respectful, and those are very good things. So appreciate it. I hope you come
I
back.
think the same thing can be said for Yenek personally. I think he was also very knowledgeable and also very
Yes,
respectful.
I do.
Johnny,
I do
I
as well. Yes, I
Yeah, and
agree.
Johnny, I just want to say it was a pleasure to meet you, and I'll hit you guys up on the Discord to thank you for your guys' time. And just so you guys know, and I'll mention this again, but I get into a lot of these live discussions. I've been invited to a lot of people's channels,
Yeah.
and so if you guys want to ever join me, it won't always be about evolution, but we talk
Of
about
course.
transcendental thing. Is there such a thing as a transcendental? Arguments to be made for that, and just
Yeah.
theology and history, and all just kind of different types of topics. So I don't know if all you do is evolution, or you'd be interested in any of that, but I'll hit you up on Discord.
Evolution's a good topic. I also like to talk about the Bible because I feel like the Bible the Bible itself is it's good evidence against itself in
I
many
agree. I agree. Yeah, absolutely. The internal critique is a great one, and we do a lot of that. Look up 21st Century Minds, Tristan Gabriel. He's graduated from seminary. He's very knowledgeable. He's become an agnostic now, so he's gone away from the faith, but he used the Bible's exactly why. So yeah, no, if I'm into that as well. So hit me up sometime.
Of course I will. Thank you so much for having me, all of you. I really appreciate it. So I hope you all have a good night.
Thank you, Jonny.
Bye, Ace Philosophy. Bye, Objective. Bye, Dirty Varmint. See y'all later. Y'all have
Nice meeting you, man.
Yeah, of course. It was a pleasure.
There were a lot of things that I wanted to discuss tonight, but since our guests have left, I think we'll probably have to leave them to future conversations. There were some things I was hoping to discuss that never really got into. I was wondering but I kind of let the guests drive the conversation. So that's probably why we didn't get some of the areas that I wanted to get into. But the things that they were bringing up were very relevant and important pieces of the puzzle. So it's not like we didn't talk about things that were important. We just didn't. There's some areas I think we didn't really get into the lack of philosophy behind evolution. But let me ask y'all this: since we're going on about 3 hours, are y'all good or dirty? Did you have some points you wanted to make, or Objective? Did you have some more points you wanted to make, or how are you all feeling about where we are?
Well, there's one thing that I just thought of while he was talking, and it was like he mentioned, biodiversity, and I would just expect biodiversity to increase over time if evolution was true, but instead we see biodiversity decreasing rapidly.
Good point. Yeah, that is a fact. There are less organisms today than there were, and I'm going to be honest with you. I have never seen evolutionists put forward an organism, and they'll say there hasn't been enough time. There has not even been one example of one organism evolving into a different kind of organism that I've ever seen them put forward, ever. And I think like you said, Dirty, we see diversity being lost all the time. But I have never seen one new type of creature created that they've ever pointed to. I think that just says something about evolution. If everything's so fluid and mutable, then why does nothing new ever arise? So that's a good point you make there. Anything else, Dirty?
No, that's it. That's pretty much it.
All right, and the Noah's Ark conversation. I want to reserve that for another time. We'll have to get back to that another time. But I understand your passion. It's an interesting topic. For me, it's not where I hang my hat, so to speak. Really, and I think that the flood kind of stands on its own. The idea of a global flood. even if you want to argue that there was no Noah, no Ark, I still think that the flood idea stands on its own apart from that. I know a lot of Christians want to tie them together, but to me, like, the evidence for them has to be discussed separately from other things. So it's kind of how I look at it.
I'm just curious, when did your flood happen then? In the timeline?
It must have happened sometime within the span of human history, because like the evidence I pointed out in my last stream, there's great amount of evidence that a lot of human civilizations are buried under the ocean, and that's just not disputable. There are buried centers of civilization thousands of feet below the sea surface. So some people, it's not like people were scuba diving and building these temples down there. They were obviously built during a time when that land was habitable. So the sea levels must have been much lower at one point. And so I think that probably would have happened I think probably during the Ice Age, when humans were living at much lower elevations. I think probably a lot of the water was stored at the polar ice caps. Again, this is theoretical, but it kind of makes sense. And then I think the Ice Age allowed the sea levels, a lot of the water was stored up there. Then it melted and covered these places. And I think that probably was interpreted as a global flood. That's kind of what makes sense to me. That's kind of like a naturalistic, like non-literal biblical way of looking at it. But I think that the melting of the polar ice caps and flooding the lower elevations is what actually happened, and it's recorded as a global flood that probably did wipe out a good amount of humanity at the time.
Interesting. So you kind of got, it sounds like your own. I mean, I've never even heard of this. So clearly this is kind of your own creation, I assume, or is there other people trying to?
Like I said, what's the data? The data is that we know that humans were living at levels that are clear, that are now under the water. So the question is, how did it happen? We could speculate about how, but there's no question that it did happen. So to me, that it just speaks to this idea that there was a very significant rise in Earth's sea levels at some point within the span of human history. I would put it within the last 10,000 years.
And that's another question I have for you is, how old do you think the Earth actually is, just out of curiosity?
I actually do think, I know Jordy's going to disagree with me, I think the Earth is probably billions of years old. I really do. I think the Earth is billions of years old, but I'm not sure if humans have inhabited the Earth that whole time. I think that's probably, I think it is interesting that our records only go back to about the same amount of time, which is about the same time the Bible says, which is like several thousand years. When you go back past several thousand years, things get really obscure really fast. There seems to be no recorded history. And if humans did live before that, and they would have been more or less as intelligent as we are now, maybe a little bit less, but they probably would have been able to read and write and do things we do now. Why does history all of a sudden? I'm just saying, why does history all of a sudden? Go ahead.
I'm not trying to leave. Yeah, I'm not trying to leave Dirty out of the conversation. So I just have a couple quick questions specifically for you while I'm thinking about it, and then you guys do whatever you want to do. But so when you said, just to stop you there, the Earth, the Bible says directly, or seems, you didn't say specifically or directly, but you kind of implied that the Bible goes back to a specific period of time, undetermined thousands of years ago. What are you talking about? Like, what does that mean? That when the Bible says? So going back to 6,000 years?
It's not just the Bible. If you look everywhere on the Earth, the records only seem to go back to several thousand years ago, maybe 5,000 years ago.
What records are you talking? What do you mean?
Like the Egyptians, the Sumerians, the Aztecs, the Mayans, they all go back to like the same amount of time in human history, which is like several thousand years ago. And before that, there's just nothing. The Greeks, maybe the Chinese, it's all like, it all ends about 5, 6, maybe 7,000 years ago. I don't know. It's just really weird. Like, if humans existed before then, why did all these civilizations around the world just suddenly end at this almost the same exact? Like, it becomes legends at that point. Like,
what about the archaeological evidence for structures that are like 10,000 years old?
I guess it would have to be proven to me that they are that old. But yeah. So
how do you know they're? How did you come up with the number 5,000 years old or 6,000 years old?
Because if you date back the lineages and the records of the people who existed it all. We got Jackie in the chat saying hello. I'm not sure if I know Jackie, but hello. Basically,
Does
if
she
you
have
look back at
those cute dogs in her profile picture? I can't see the people in the chat. Is it a bunch of dogs, like a poodles or something like that?
it is a bunch. Yeah, it looks like a bunch of sheep or
Yes.
poodles or something.
Yes. Yeah, I know Jackie. Jackie, hello. She was yeah. Good to see you, Jackie.
Unfortunately, yeah, Jackie, it seems like if you just joined, you've missed a lot. Okay, Jackie, yeah, just like and subscribe. We have conversations about theology, philosophy, God, the Bible, things like that. So, I'm a theist. I'm a Christian, and but I'm not like a Christian, and I kind of disagree with a lot of Christians on a lot of topics. So you can go look at my channel and see what my videos are if you have a million hours on your hand, which you probably don't, but if you do, you can do that. Anyways, yeah. So I think we should kind of wind it down. I guess we'll do. Are y'all fine with closing statements, or do y'all want to present more arguments for objective? Do you have more you want to say about evolution or evidence you want to present?
No,
or do you
no,
want
we
to...
could definitely. No, we can move on. We can shut it down and move. Pick it up another
Okay.
time.
All right. How about we do this? We'll do closing statements. Dirty. You take a few minutes to say whatever you want. It can be about the flood, Noah's Ark, evolution, anything really. You can talk about your favorite childhood cartoon if you want, but just try to limit it to like a few minutes. And then,
Well, I mean, I don't really have much to say. I'd like to join next time. And talk about Noah's flood and stuff like that. I think that I would like to say that the heat problem or whatever with Noah's flood. I do admit that there would be a significant amount of heat if water came out from under the earth, and that would heat up the oceans to like 80 degrees Fahrenheit, which would cause the ice age, because the rapid evaporation of water would cover the earth with like this clouds, and then that would precipitate in ice. And so I think the only way it's possible to get an ice age is if you have a global flood with hot water. I just think that's the ice age itself being a thing is proof that there was a global flood. But we can get into that next time. Thanks for having me up, and I enjoyed listening to the show.
thank you for being here, Dirty. I always appreciate your contributions.
All right,
Engagement. All right, objective. Likewise, any closing statements you have? Any thoughts? Any opinions? Any arguments? Final arguments you want to make? Feel free to take the next few minutes to go ahead and do that, and then I'll boot you and I'll make my own closing argument or statement. Go ahead.
Yeah, I thought that there was a very good conversation. I think that there was a bit of an impasse because of what we're willing to accept and what we're disregarding as actual evidence. I think the claim of observable science versus actual science is kind of ridiculous. Personally, I think that's just not how science in general works. But I understand where you're coming from there. To me, it sounded like a lot of argument for incredulity. I didn't see any alternative hypothesis, and I still haven't heard an alternative hypothesis. So an attempt to disprove something by simply saying it can't happen without actually explaining why it can't happen, other than, well, we don't see it happening, is frankly, just in my opinion, just not a solid argument. But overall, I thought the conversation was very productive, and it was a learning experience for me, and I really appreciate it. I just want to give a shout out again to Jonny and Yenek for coming in and taking time out of their weekend to do this, and also for you for hosting. And I appreciate that this is the kind of civil discourse that I'm used to having on your channel, and I'm looking forward to having several more conversations about this. I did do a little experiment on my own, just to kind of give you an idea about something you had mentioned in the past about it would be impossible to get those fossils up on the mountain without destroying them and stuff. So there's some things we can talk about that on a future conversation, but I'd also like to get into some of the stuff that you and I have touched on before that we've never finished out, such as problems with when it comes to the ethics and the morality that people ascribe to God, and things about transcendental arguments, the mind versus the brain, and all these other things that we've touched on. So I think there's a lot, the future is bright as far as I'm concerned for these discussions, and I appreciate you hosting these.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say I really am thankful that you kind of set this up and you invited these guests. I thought it was a really interesting conversation. I'm glad it remained respectful. It got a little bit heated there, but it remained very civil, very polite at all times. All parties, no one did anything that would be seen as directly a personal attack or anything like that. It was a nice conversation, and I agree. There's a lot of room for other conversations, not just about evolution, but a number of the topics we discussed. And I really do want to continue discussing evolution because I think it, in my opinion, and this is something we can discuss, I think if evolution is false, then atheism is false. And I know that's kind of a controversial statement, but yes, I do believe that atheism falls, if evolution falls, then atheism falls with it. So I think atheists, not a lot of atheists or skeptics would agree with that statement, but I'm willing to defend it philosophically. And if you,
Well, there's
but also, go ahead.
Well, and I know I'm supposed to be getting out of here, but there's a very interesting conversation here where we're talking about the existence of a God or an intelligent being or something like that is completely removed from any religion that we actually have. And ultimately, that's the application of this, understanding is, okay, so there's a God out there, but then what do we do with that? And that is where we start to get into the real crux of the problem as far as atheism and agnostics like myself are concerned. I mentioned that guy Mike from Reconstructionism promoting slavery and racism and making bigoted comments against gay people because he didn't like me calling him a jerk about that. You know what I mean? Like this is the kind of, it's the behavior, the way people vote, the way people interact with each other and stuff. And that's why it's important to say, even if we yield the God thing from a deistic standpoint, then what do we do with it from there? That's and that's an interesting conversation we should probably have at some point. If I give you the God, then what? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another. Yeah. So right. So yeah, we will. There's a lot of room for future discussions and conversations about a variety of topics. So, all right, Objective. Again, thank you for being here and thank you for setting all this up. And let's hope there's more. If you have any other things, how about this? Think of some. Okay, well, you can listen. Yeah, if you think of some more focused discussions you want to have and people we want to bring on, send me another email. We can set something else up. I will make my concluding arguments. So really, this discussion was primarily about evolutionary theory. It was with 4 guests who are proponents of evolutionary theory. I reject the theory of evolution. I don't think it's true. I think God created living things. I think, or at the very least, intelligent design makes a lot more sense. We talked about, let's see, to me, we talked about a number of points of evidence that were brought up. We talked about the human-chimp relatedness. I think I was able to just first of all, let's try to do this in a systematic way. The specific points we went through. Anyone can go back and look. I was able to demonstrate that humans and chimps, new science has shown that they are not 98% similar. They're probably closer to 85% similar. That presents a very, very serious problem with evolution. I reject the idea that genetic similarities between organisms show evolutionary relatedness. To me, it's just a philosophical mistake to say that because humans and apes are 98% similar. Even if I grant that, let's just grant, even though we know it's not true anymore, it's a myth that was promoted by the scientific community. Even if we grant that humans and chimps are 98% similar, that doesn't mean that they evolved from a common ancestor. And the reason we can say that is because the whole thing in question is what happened? Was it evolution by natural selection, or was it intelligent design or a god? Well, if 2 creatures are morphologically similar, like humans and apes, then God has basically made it so that organisms run on DNA. The DNA can kind of be thought about as the computer code or the code that programs the organism, and especially the physiological makeup of the organism. Well, if 2 organisms are morphologically similar, you would expect the genetic code to be very similar. So just the fact that they're genetically similar doesn't prove that there's evolutionary common descent. So that's just a philosophical problem I constantly seeing evolutionists make. And I use the term evolutionist just colloquially. It's not a pejorative, but they constantly make the case. I constantly see this philosophical pitfall or a short kind of blind spot where they think that genetic similarity proves evolutionary common descent, and that's philosophically unfounded. Okay, because what you would have to prove is that genetic mutations can basically accrue in such a way as to produce a new living organism from a previous one. Yenek, who was on the channel earlier, he had to leave sooner. He made this. I acted like I'd never heard of the law of monophyly before. I have. It's the and it started out with a conversation about. I made the claim that a dog will never. A dog, for evolution to be true, a dog has to evolve into something other than a dog. And then Yenek made the mistake of promoting the law of monophyly, which he said, "Oh no, a dog will never." That's not what evolution teaches. Nothing ever evolves beyond what it originally was. You can go back and watch the discussion. I'm not making this up. This is his own argument. So I was like, oh, I thought that according to evolution, we all evolved from a single-celled amoeba. Are humans? So nothing can ever evolve according to law of monophyly beyond a single-celled amoeba. And I said, so are humans a single-celled amoeba? I go back and watch the conversation. Yenek said yes. He said humans are a prokaryote. And if you go look at the definition of prokaryote, we went through all this. I'm not making this up. For people who are joining now, you probably think I'm making this up. No, Yenek, who fancies himself very learned in evolutionary theory, told me that there's no fundamental difference between a human and a single-celled prokaryote. Then we got into the idea of mitochondria. These are data points that I was asking, what is the actual evidence for evolution? Notice they never actually point to anything that had actually evolved and been observed. They were telling stories about things that happened billions of years ago, like that mitochondria once existed independently of the cells in which they live today. And so what's the evidence of that? Oh, they have their own nucleus, their own genetic material. So, okay, God could have made it like that. What's the evidence that they actually were? I said, is there any evidence that they either did exist independently of cells or that they can now? He said, oh yeah. I said, well, where is it? He said, well, the fact that there are bacteria at all shows that, let's say bacteria aren't mitochondria, but bacteria have mitochondria, all right? Because mitochondria are what produce energy for the cell. And then there was another point where he was wrong. I said, well, the mitochondria are coded for in the DNA. So for them to, how did it get from a symbiotic relationship to their proteins literally being coded for in the nucleic material? This is a huge, huge problem, because what you're going to have to argue is that mitochondria, before cells had energy producing organelles, somehow were operating without them. Then the mitochondria came into the cell. At that point, there was no genetic production material in the nucleus for a mitochondria. And what you're going to have to say is, over time, these extremely complex proteins, which make up the mitochondria, randomly arose in genetic mutations and then replaced the original mitochondria, and mitochondria then became dependent on the nucleic acid. And there is no evidence any of this ever happened. It's a giant story that was told. And when I asked what is the evidence, they were appealing to things that happened billions of years ago, which obviously is not evidence because it's nothing observed. The only evidence we have suggests that mitochondria are just organelles in a cell. They were never part of anything else. But when you presuppose evolution is true, you start to believe the stories that you know are necessary are what actually happened. So for Yenek, for his beliefs to be true, mitochondria had to be a self-existent, independent organism that then became part of the cell. Even though, and he thinks that because he knows that's necessary, but he thinks that the necessity of that, according to evolution, means that it actually happened in history. I'm sorry, there's no evidence that it happened in history, except for the stories that evolutionists tell. There are, when we got to abiogenesis, which is not technically part of evolution, people talking about how there's evidence saying that, the amino acids formed in these experiments and on these asteroids, which is, I'm sorry, I just don't believe NASA found these amino acids on this asteroid. I don't care what their article says. But even let's just give it to them. They found 14 of the 20 amino acids and all the nucleobases. Wow, they can't find them on Earth, but they find them on asteroids way out in space where no one else can go and verify their data. Cool, NASA. That's not suspicious at all. Anyways, let's just give it to them. They found all this stuff that they can't find on Earth, but they found on an asteroid out in the middle of space with no atmosphere, no biomolecules, nothing. They found it on this random asteroid out in space. How stupid. But anyways, this is what they claim. So I guess we got to go with it. The amino acids aren't enough. By the way, you're only finding a few of them, 14 of the 20. You need all 20. Second of all, they're not organized in anything that's living. Amino acids are like bricks. You get a bunch of bricks in a pile. That's not the Empire State Building. The analogy is you're trying to build the Empire State Building naturally. And these evolutionists are trying to say that, well, we found amino acids. We found the building blocks. Okay, congratulations. Let's watch the building blocks stack themselves into the Taj Mahal or the Eiffel Tower or whatever it is, that these complex structures that are specifically designed by intelligent beings. The amino acids are just the bare bones necessary materials. You can't even get to the proteins yet. The proteins are necessary, but you can't get the proteins without the DNA. The DNA is coded for by the proteins. And then I showed them all how the evolution is mathematically impossible. They will have to go and analyze that data based on accumulation of genetic information in the genome. And I showed, and before we ran, I pointed out to them that developmental gene regulatory networks are immutable. If you can't mutate gene regulatory networks, then you can't get from one organism to another. You can't get from a worm to something other than a worm. It's always going to be a worm. So there are tons of scientific reasons that I didn't even get to because I was so busy trying to show them that from a bare philosophical standpoint, you are not presenting actual evidence of evolution. You are presenting stories that you might think must be true if evolution is true. But I will go back and watch this stream. I do not think one single observable piece of evidence was presented for evolution. It was all based on stories about things that happened billions of years ago. And that's what I always see. There's no actual evidence for evolution. There are fairy tales, just like it's really no different from Noah's Ark or, the tales about Vishnu and the Hinduist mythology. It's all stuff we can't observe. It's just a different religion. Which I know is something that Ken Hovind says, but that's what evolution is. It's faith-based claims that people assume are true because it's quote unquote science. And science is true and religion is not true. So because it's science, and we know that it couldn't have been God, so it must have happened this way. So yeah, evolution's true, and let's just move on. Okay, that's you can presuppose that, but again, that's a presupposition. I don't think a single piece of evolution. We had it. I wanted to talk about evolution, the evidence for it. Not a single piece of evidence for evolution was presented. We got stories about how things might have happened, probably happened. I want it to happen this way. I think it might have happened this way, but the actual evidence we observed doesn't show that. It's all stories about things that happened billions of years ago, millions of years ago, and you can make up all kinds of stories about stuff like that. But again, what's the actual evidence? Why can't scientists point to anything that's actually evolved in real time? The Lenski experiments. He started his E. coli experiment in the 80s. Guess what? If you go into Lenski's labs today, you're not seeing anything other than E. coli in his lab. The E. coli that's there today looks exactly like the E. coli that existed in the 1980s when he started his experiment. So E. coli, which reproduces a lot faster than humans and goes through a lot more generations very quickly, is basically not evolving at all. But they want us to evolve that, whales evolved from a little dog called Pakicetus in about 10 million years, and humans evolved from apes in about 5 million years. Meanwhile, E. coli aren't evolving at all. We're looking at them. They're not turning into any other type of bacteria. Viruses. Every virus is still a virus. All these things that have trillions and trillions of individual organisms in one person. Our coronavirus is still a coronavirus. Oh, it mutates. Yeah, we're not denying things mutate and the allele frequencies change. We already established that. We're looking for something that's changing into, like, there's a big difference between a human and a prokaryote. There's not a difference between the E. coli in Lenski's original experiment and what they see today. They're still E. coli. I want to see something like a fish evolving into a reptile. We all we have is fish giving birth to fish. This is what I'm talking about, folks. So maybe next time, if there is a future conversation, I will actually see some evidence for evolution. But as far as I'm concerned, go back and look. I honestly don't see how anything that was presented or argued today is evidence for evolution. But I did present a lot of reasons to think evolution is impossible, mathematically impossible, and based on just data. And I showed how the logic behind what they're saying just doesn't hold up. It's not scientific. So, anyways, those are my claims. I guarantee you my guests on the panel today will disagree with me. But I'm just asking you to go back and watch the stream and do your research. And I had literally 10 tabs of anti-evolutionary science ready to go for however long this covered, and we didn't get there. I got to some of it briefly, touched on it briefly. And y'all can go research that. We can have future conversations, and maybe we'll get to that in future conversations. But anyways, regardless, I do want to thank everyone who was on the panel today. I want to thank my guests. I'm being very sincere when I say they were very polite. I think it was a good conversation, and I really do hope to talk to them again. And maybe we can cover further ground and discuss other topics, or rehash what we had today and figure out why we're still at an impasse over these things. So, again, last thing I'll say is please like and subscribe if you haven't already. I do plan on hosting more of these conversations. Recently, we've been going more into skepticism and reasons to doubt, theism and the Christianity. But most of my channel's history, I've been talking to Christians about Christian theology and the problems therein, problems about salvation, approach to scripture, and things like that. So maybe at some point we'll get back to that. I'm hoping the Christians will come back and we'll have some theological discussions, which the skeptics don't care much for, because it's all nonsense to them. But I think there's validity to it, and I think there is a soul. I think that there is a God who's going to judge our souls. So to me, it is interesting. I do think Jesus was a real person whose claims should be investigated and analyzed to see if they're true or not, whether they are the truth about salvation of the soul. So there's that. Anyways, yeah, like and subscribe, and come back next time. Thank you. God bless all. Bye.